A guy with bright red hair was walking through town, staring at his phone screen, and saw that in just 3 days he had become the first in the rankings, and now he had nothing to play again. There wasn't an ounce of pride in his voice, just boredom and emptiness. But his thoughts were cold and detached. He didn't care about anything, and was bored in this boring world. Seeing a huge car in front of him, he realized that these words were not just a passing mood. They felt the heaviness that had accumulated over many years of monotonous life. And soon reborn, he became the son of the Lingzun family. After a few years of growing up, strange phenomena began to occur, in which he learned that he possessed magic. And with these abilities, he could kill an unseen monster with one hand. His parents were shocked after such an incident, but the worst part was that he still had to go to school. Every morning he would head to school with a disgruntled face, and every time his parents wished him good luck in his exams, and believed that he was the strongest. But the protagonist got angry every time and asked them not to dishonor him. But one thing was a good decision for him to go to school. After all, he still remembered his beautiful classmate. She always smelled so good. They always offered him a sparring match. And after that, he would look at the quiet campus every time. In front of his face, he saw reality floating away, and felt that this world would definitely not make him bored. After 8 years, he had a new name under which he was called Jijin, and now he still had memories of his past life in the modern world. And now he was in the world of spiritual strength and cultivation. He had been living with his parents in the desolate countryside since birth, but his parents seemed like ordinary people. The daily routine consists of practicing and learning new techniques. It's no longer a game to him, but a reality. And after hearing the words about cultivating to become stronger, he no longer found anything more exciting. His mother thought that her son had the talent of a cultivator, and she would let him do it. Practicing for 8 years, she had reached the spiritual realm. But C wasn't a stupid guy either, and realized that it took him 8 years to reach the spiritual realm. And cultivating with these mortal parents, it would take him 80 years to reach the spiritual deity. So he decided to think of ways to become even stronger. Soon, one of the teachers met with his parents and notified them that Sai was already 16 years old, and he could already enroll in his school. His mother looked at her husband and was fine with it. But to them, their son seemed always too strong. But Master made them realize that even though they were training him, 16-year-olds are usually only at the level of a spiritual master. And he thought they were underestimating his school, and he had many wonderful students. But his father notified the teacher that they specifically trained him, but how strong he has become, they don't even know how to say. Sai was in the forest at this moment testing his new weapon. He had been building it all this time, and it was finally completely ready. He now had the most accurate weapon in the modern world, called a shotgun. As it was being made, he found himself a blacksmith who forged it, added the explosive power of flint, a thunderstone that gave electromagnetic acceleration, and infused the bullets with spiritual power. And this gun he knew would definitely be the beginning in this world. Suddenly seeing one of the creatures coming at him, he managed to take a couple steps back. Immediately in midair, he fired several shots, aiming for the creature's head. But he knew the exceptions he remembered. To defeat such a strong monster, it was not enough, and he seemed to need more flint and thunderstone. He pulled a grenade from his pocket and pulled the bolt with his teeth. It was made of flint. The creature didn't wait long on the spot and pounced on the protagonist. Sai immediately threw his grenade in his face, and there was a huge explosion. The parents walking in the forest immediately turned around in the direction of the explosion. After that, they immediately ran up to him, and they saw that in front of Sai lay a huge creature that was twice as big as the guy himself. It was a shock to them. The teacher after that decided to talk to him, and told the guy that although he had killed the monster, he was still at the level of a spiritual master, and fighting level 5 monsters was very dangerous. Sue thought that the teacher with those words would have enough of him, but the teacher explained to him that even though it was a level 5 monster that could only be defeated by a spiritual commander, however, the kid killed him very quickly. And now he is inviting him to train at the school. He will learn common sense. If he continues to follow those two, he will only lose it even more. They will hide his identity to prevent a commotion among the students. He was surprised to hear about hiding his identity and decided to ask if it was mandatory. The teacher replied with a sad face that yes, his parents are spiritual deities and he is their son. Sai initially didn't understand such words, but then he was shocked when he heard about such things. After all, he didn't even know that his parents were spiritual deities. The parents immediately felt embarrassed after the teacher called them spiritual deities. But from what he saw, the teacher was also confused because he thought that his parents had already talked to him about it. The story said that the level of a spiritual deity one obtains when one reaches the pinnacle of one's cultivation. In the entire world, there are only a few people who have accomplished this. And for that, there is a place called the Royal Training Academy. It is the continent's most prestigious school that has graduated several spiritual deities. He even heard his parents attended it. And no matter what world he lived in, the school could not be avoided by him. His parents escorted him to the school and thought their son was now an adult. But his father consoled his mother and asked them not to be sad, because after Sai left, they would continue their honeymoon. Sai heard these words from his parents and thought that they were sending him to school just to have fun. Heading to school, his parents gave him some advice, in warm words. But Sai didn't like it and asked them not to embarrass him. But these words were heard not only by him, and one of the students came up to him and decided to find out since when children are brought by their parents to the examination at the Royal Academy. But this student was already well known to everyone, and they knew that he was a young master from the Chin family who was always causing trouble, and again, now he was picking on someone. But he was also considered cocky because of his father being an officer in the army, and the newcomer is now finished, he doesn't stand a chance. But Sai walked beside him without answering him and started looking for where the exam room was. The guy got angry and told him to stop, and made it clear that this school was only for people from great families, and showed his badge, and thought Sue was just trash, but even threatened to get him out of here while he could. Sai pretended he didn't hear anything, and turned around to ask him what he was talking about. The guy didn't allow such disrespect and decided to teach the newcomer a lesson by making him listen to what he was being told from now on. Seeing the fire magic, Z immediately prepared himself. The guy still said that he could see the fear in the newcomer's eyes, and notified him that he was known for his spiritual fire art, and now he should ask for mercy to let him go. But Z remembered in his mind that his mother had taught him such a thing when he had studied spiritual magic at the age of 3. And later, when he saw her using spiritual magic without an array, that's what he started to do. And now he even misses those times. The spiritual power he felt while the guy was casting the spell was too weak, and that's the spiritual level of an ordinary person. He kept thinking that his parents were at the level of ordinary people. Sai took a small breath, and with his wind magic just blew the fire magic off the guy's hands. Seeing the fire magic disappear, the guy started to think, what happened? And what did this newbie do? He can't create fire anymore. As he left, Sue let him know that it was just ordinary spirit magic. He had only temporarily removed the oxygen around his hand. Hearing such words, the guy didn't even know what kind of oxygen he was talking about. Sue was surprised that there was no understanding of oxygen in this world yet, so the guy just wouldn't understand. At this moment, the guy realized that the newcomer was just mocking him. He pounced on him with his fists and yelled for the newcomer not to dare look down on him, and he wouldn't let him get away with it so easily. Sue pulled his head to the side and, covering his kin with his hand again, released a magical oxygen attack and asked him to relax. The guy grabbed his throat and slowly started to die. After all, he couldn't breathe. Sai realized that this was the first time he had used this on a human. The guy just fell to the ground and didn't even make a movement. Suddenly, a girl came up to him and was saying that it was very helpful, and she didn't know what to do when she met him. The girl introduced herself under the name Mu Jilan and let the guy know that she was happy to meet him. Sue was also happy to meet her and introduced himself as well. He immediately appreciated her body and thought she was beautiful. In his past life, he had been bad with the opposite sex and had only talked to his mother in his entire life. Jilan directly let him know that she thought he was strong. Sue replied that it was just that guy was a weakling to him. That's all. So there they came to the testing room, and the man in charge was telling everyone to put all their spiritual energy into the stones in front of them. Sai looked around and saw everything exactly as the headmaster had described to him. Even though disciples who reach the rank of spiritual master at this age are considered talented, they are all ordinary guys. Jilan approached the first stone, and reaching out their hands towards it, they transferred their energy into it, and the light turned out to be very bright. She immediately felt that her spiritual power was much more powerful than the others, and he felt like she couldn't be called an ordinary person. The disciples were astonished, and they heard that it was a princess from a neighboring country who had already reached rank 4. Sai didn't stay aside and praised her, saying that she was quite good. And so it was his turn, and heard him being told to put all his spiritual power into the stone. As he touched the stone with his hand, a white light just enveloped the entire room and began to blind everyone around him. Jalan watched everything with the edge of her eye and realized in her head what kind of power this guy had. Then the light just turned into a red light and the rays flew over the room. But suddenly, all of a sudden, everyone heard the cracking of a rock that couldn't withstand his power. He realized that if this continued, the spirit stone would explode. And he needs to quickly withdraw his spiritual energy. He withdrew his spiritual energy and the stone remained intact. But the disciples saw that this meant that the guy was at the second rank. And they didn't understand why people with that rank were still taking the test. Isn't that shameful? Jalan noticed the snag in this, but she didn't understand why this was the case. She had never seen anyone break a measuring spirit stone. Sue thought it was just a crappy stone, and he really restrained himself, but the stone did break, and pieces of the stone slowly fell in front of him. After the first stage, the second entrance exam is held in the backyard of the academy. The teachers turned to the candidates and notified them that the practical part of the entrance exam would now begin. And according to the rules, they are required to earn points by killing demons of different ranks within 2 hours. 1 point for killing a demon of the first rank, 2 points for a demon of the second rank, 4 points for the third rank, 8 points for the fourth rank, and only students with 50 points can advance. And to top it off, there are rank 5 demons on the mountain, and now they're asking students to avoid them. And it's time to end the ceremony, and it's time to start the exam. Sue immediately sniffed and felt that the place smelled like monsters, just like the backyard of his house. Suddenly, he saw that one of the recruits next to him had already started chasing after a monster and was asking the monster not to run away from him. Sai pulled out his weapon and started moving around at a fast speed and took away the monster from the guy. After he finished him, he apologized to him, and there was nothing he could do about it. The kid got angry and started yelling that he knew him. He's a second-ranked guy and dares to take his prey. Sai landed in front of him and told him not to be such a sucker. And isn't it common in P or Gs to steal monsters from others? The guy grabbed Sai's shoulder and told him to cut the crap. After all, he had insulted the great Yin family, so he wouldn't leave so easily. But these words were heard by another recruit and decided to ask him why he was doing this. And he thinks it's humiliating. He knows very well that in this school, it is forbidden to mention his title. The guy turned around to the convert and recognized him as Lin Yun, the eldest son of the Lin clan who has already reached rank 4 and is considered a genius. He decided to leave them, and afterwards he let them know that he knew the guy with the surname Sai and threatened to teach him a lesson. Sai thought his words were like a fairy tale and didn't even pay attention to it. But then he thanked Yun for being so helpful and introduced himself to him, saying he was glad to meet him. Yun introduced himself in return and said that everyone was afraid to approach him, so this guy was the first to talk to him. And since fate had brought them together, he suggested to him that they should fight as a team. Sue replied to him that he would gladly take him up on his offer, and in his head he realized that he needed to study the fourth-ranked man. The teachers watched the whole thing through a stone that showed all the participants. The teacher felt that this was not only a test of martial skills, but also teamwork. And this time, most of the cultivators are rank 3, and only a few outstanding disciples with rank 4. But even a rank 4 name, it's very difficult to accomplish this task alone. Only if everyone works hard and cooperates together. And only then will they kill the monsters and meet the time limit. One of the groups during the exam had already gathered and acted swiftly, killing every monster. But Yun was telling the newcomer that most of the candidates are sons of nobles who are seeing monsters for the first time. And to be honest, even he wasn't confident. And now they've worked out a perfect plan with him. C will sit in defense, and he will attack them. Suddenly, all of a sudden, the monster himself found them, and with his sharp teeth, he started to see the food in front of him. Yun started yelling that it was a rank 4 demon, a 2-headed dog, and they are surrounded by them, and felt that he needed to quickly finish off this monster and save Zijin. And it seems to him that the guy is so scared that he can't move. Sai looked at them like animals, and it was the first time he saw a 2-headed dog, and he didn't know how this happened. After all, genetic mutation due to turning into a demon? Well, or inherited abnormal chromosomes. Suddenly, the doggy saw Sai throwing himself at him and started barking in fear, just as Yun was trying to finish them off, and picked the perfect moment to unleash his diamond attack. After catching the monster, he let out even more force to finish off the monster faster. He saw the monster's body and felt that killing a rank 4 monster alone was hard. But then he remembered that he had forgotten about Sai. But when he approached him, he was shocked, because the rookie had already handled everything and didn't know who he was. The teacher suddenly looked closely at the map and saw that things had gotten even worse. After all, the exam had just started, and these two had already encountered rank 4 demons. And the young master from the Lin clan, as expected, had interrupted the horde of demonic beasts in a moment. And judging from his strength, he might even be able to defeat a rank 5 demon. But the second teacher started to deny it, and notified that they had purposely done so because candidates at rank 4 wouldn't be able to defeat a rank 5 demon. And this was done to test the candidate's ability to avoid danger. And who would even bother to fight a rank 5 demon? The first teacher thought about it and agreed. After all, a level 5 demon is also the king of the mountain, and if he dies, then all other demons will stop fighting, and the exam would naturally be suspended. But the head teacher at this moment was praying that Z would not cause him any problems. Yun decided to share and knows that Sai is an unusual candidate with the second rank. But if he continues to move in this direction, and according to his spiritual detection, there is a rank 5 demonic beast ahead, and it's not like he's thinking of fighting it. Su made a weakling of himself and showed that he couldn't fight a rank 5 demon beast at all. And just someone went here, and he thought they could help. Yun thought for a moment and replied that perhaps it was a disciple who hadn't learned spiritual detection yet, so they really should help. But one of the teachers saw a problem on the map and didn't understand how a disciple could go to a rank 5 demon. Soon it turned out to be Zilog, who traced the monster and watched it from a tree. She thought that this was a great opportunity to kill the rank 5 monster. If she killed it, she would be immediately accepted into the academy. She decided to act and attack the monster from the tree, which soon caused an explosion. But it didn't even move the monster, but made it even more angry. In the smoke, she saw glowing eyes, and the monster launched a counterattack. Jalan realized that the monster was still unharmed, and began to doubt whether she could defeat it with rank 4. The guys also heard the explosion and even felt the gusting wind. Yun immediately realized and shared that someone had awakened that demon, and they would be in danger if they went any further. Jalan couldn't handle it, but she thought it was decent for a rank 5 monster, and she feels like she can't defeat it with normal methods. And now she thinks she is forced to use that very technique. But the monster was faster, and the moment she activated the attack, it attacked her and broke her shield. She immediately blacked out after being hit so hard and thought that was all she could do, and she was finished. But Su rushed to her and caught her in midair, preventing her from falling to the ground and breaking her bones. Su brought her to her senses and found out if she was okay. Jilan, seeing a familiar face, just blushed. The protagonist immediately let her go and thought she was fine, and it was time for them to scorch out of here. But Yoon didn't realize that and decided to ask why he was so serious and now he was running away. Su replied that of course it was funny, but he felt a sense of déjà vu when he came here. But the monster wasn't ready to let them go and started chasing them. As they ran away, Su told them that the creature was a relative of the big guy that lived on the mountain behind his house. Yun thought it sounded like he had already met a rank 5 demon, and already he should stop whining and do something about it. But Z answered him that here, Yun himself should know how dangerous a fight with a rank 5 demon was for them. Isn't he being guided by common sense? The guy replied that unlike him, they can't scatter a mountain of rank 4 two-headed dogs with one blow. And he knows that Su hid his strength during the rank tests, so there's no need to pretend like he's on a roll. Sai decided to act already and sticking his hand inside his pocket pulled out a grenade. And sending the grenade straight towards the monster, he ordered everyone to lie down on the ground. But Yoon was wondering from him what he had just thrown at the demon. Suddenly, before he could finish his words, there was a huge explosion. Turning back, Yoon was shocked to see that the rank 5 monster immediately died. The teachers were also shocked that a rank 5 demon had just died. But Master immediately realized that it was the boy's doing. Both Z and Yoon know how to make trouble for him. The rest of the group was also suddenly surprised. After all the other monsters started running away from the humans. The guy started to wonder what was going on here. And why are all the demons running away? The teacher was still reeling from this and shared that for the first time in 30 years of history, someone had killed a rank 5 demon during a practical exam. And all the demons lost the will to fight. After only 2 hours, the test would have to be stopped. And now not everyone would be able to pass, and they would lose many students. The master thought about the decision and realized that there was no way out, and they will have to accept all the students. After the disruption of the second task, all the students went to the Royal Training Academy and had to be instructed for the new students. Jilan still couldn't get over what had happened and was figuring out who Sai was and who taught him such tricks. But Yoon separated them and made it clear that everyone has a past that they don't want to talk about, so it was worth waiting until he was ready. Jilan thought for a moment and thought it was fine not to know much about the people he knew. But suddenly a voice came out saying that they were inviting Li Xian, the headmaster, to the stage to give a speech. The principal came on stage and suggested to the students that they should look at each other for starters. And now he congratulates everyone for passing the entrance exams and enrolling in the academy. However, they shouldn't think that they could relax. This is just the beginning. In this school, only strength means strength. The weak they sacrifice without pity, and those who don't do well will be weeded out and will serve as stepping stones for other students to succeed. Hearing such strong words, all the students were simply wary and could not say a word. But the headmaster also let them know that the academy had graduated many spiritual masters, and most of their teachers were masters of rank and above. And in the last Purgatory War, their students and teachers helped forge peace by participating in battles. And if there is a force in this continent that will keep it stable and prosperous, that force is this academy. He realized that he would have to plow through to reach the rank of spiritual emperor in the shortest possible time. One of the guys started teasing him unexpectedly and said that it was a joke. And this school is full of geniuses, but only a few reach rank 8. And having ambition is good, but it's better for him not to hover in the clouds. But Yoon heard those words and confirmed that he was not the one joking. The superintendent notified the disciples that the disciple who killed a rank 5 demon will speak next, and they asked him to come up to the stage. Su abandoned the arrogant disciples and headed to the stage. But Yoon stood up for him and smilingly told them that this was the guy who had killed a rank 5 demon. The arrogant guys were shocked at what they saw and couldn't even find the words to say. Soai, as a confident student, stood up and started to say that since they were enrolled in the academy, they had become classmates. But in his head, he was afraid to answer questions in class that he couldn't open his mouth. But now he was speaking in front of everyone and let them know that he wished to make friends with everyone to help each other. And if they don't understand something, they can ask him. That way they will all develop. The students started to resent the fact that a rank 2 weakling came on stage, and he still wants to be friends with them. And they let him know not to think he was so tough. How could he even defeat a rank 5 demon? And he must have gotten help from his rank 4 friends. Sai started to blush with shame because a huge number of people were just staring at him. And now he thought that he would never have any luck in school. But suddenly Zhan came up to him and said that they need to talk, and now advises him not to stand out. The school is full of newcomers, so he'll get in trouble every day. Sai replied to the principal not to worry. No one can beat him anyway. And the principal was actually afraid of that. And anyway, let him know that he better not use such tricks in front of everyone so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Siu smiled at the principal and replied that he understood. The next day, all the students began their training. The teacher explained to them that in the basic spiritual arts lessons, they would start with a test in which they would attack the target with their best techniques. All the students lined up in a row, but out of all of them, Jilan stood out. She used her bow, and after pulling the magical bowstring, she used the breath of an arrow. The arrow was so powerful that when it hit the target, it shattered it into tiny pieces. The disciples who saw this thought that if they were hit by such an arrow, they would have been moved. And this is worthy of a rank 4 rank. Jilan turned around and realized that she had earned the respect of the other disciples. He waited his turn and headed for the starting point. But one of the students started teasing him and asked if a rank 2 loser could use spiritual arts. Su realized that he didn't need to pay attention to them and needed to be less active for a while. After all, the Mujalan technique compresses air into the shape of an arrow and secures it with spiritual pressure. And when the arrow hits the target, the shape disappears and the compressed air explodes. Sai decided to do the same and not stand out. Closing his eyes, he realized that he needed to use 30% strength. Jalan, seeing the same technique she used, was a little and surprised. Releasing an arrow, he hit the target directly, but the stone only cracked. The guys supported him and let him know that the power contained in the arrow was weak, but it wasn't bad for his level. But Z turned his attention to Jilan and saw her laughing. Still, he is not as good as her, But Jilan was very angry with him. After all, this is her personal, unique technique, and he had trained her with a single glance. Sia felt that she was very angry with him and realized that things were not good. Soon the lesson was over, and the main character decided to wash out quietly. He felt that it was too dangerous, and he thought that learning spiritual arts in a chaotic environment was a bad idea. But Jalan was still angry with him and started to pursue him. C heard her voice and realized that he had to get the hell out again, and he can't get rid of her. The protagonist started running away from her and didn't know how he could get rid of her. But Sue's breath hitched and he stopped and decided to ask her what she wanted from him and how long would she keep following him. Jilin answered him that he still hadn't said what he did in class. Sue didn't bother to reply and asked that they discuss it tomorrow. After all, he had important things to do right now. Jilan started to get indignant and didn't know what could be more important than that. Sue told her that Taobao is having a sale, and all the necessities are 10 yuan each. When he arrived at Taobao, he was shocked that there were so many people here, and everyone was trying to buy things for themselves. Sue, along with Jilan, were trying to get through, and he didn't think the princess would come to a poor people's sale like this. But Yun made him realize that she may be a princess, but her country is certainly not rich, not even richer than this one. And now she's telling him to treat her like an ordinary girl. But in the crowd, suddenly someone crashes into her, and she is knocked off her feet. But Sue managed to react at that moment and caught her, preventing her from falling. But feeling her warm chest, he immediately blushed in the moment, because the feeling of warmth affected him. Jilan apologized for such a thing and sent it all away to the crowd of people. The protagonist couldn't budge and replied that it was fine. Once in front of the vendor, they both started to order things that would fit them. After all, the crowd was still squeezing them. After that, they decided to walk around the market, and Jilan saw a small sheep she picked up and told her that her country was founded by nomads. But C was fooling around and asked if there were many pastures there. The girl replied that it was all right and told him that the wind always blows in those fields. And in the depths of these pastures, white sheep graze like a pearl in the fields. Sue listened to her and thought it must be beautiful. The girl replied that it is actually the most beautiful place in the world, and the ordinary people from the fields always share the most precious things with the newcomers. And at night the moon and stars shine so brightly that their light reflects off the fields, and the world stands still for a moment. And the evening wind blows lightly, and the grass moves toward the mountains. Especially in summer, when the fields are green and grassy, a deep breath will give him a light scent of grass and trees that will relax and calm him. She asked her if she missed home. Jalan thought about it and decisively replied that she wouldn't want to miss it, and asked the vendor to give her cultivation talismans. She became very curious and asked her why she didn't buy all the things she needed to practice. The girl replied that all that money was earned by the hard work of her people, so she couldn't squander it until she earned the money herself. The girl bought all the things she needed for herself and asked the guy that they should get out of here already. Sai was surprised that she is such a kind and clumsy girl who spends everything left and right, so he headed off after her. But soon he realized that he was very deeply mistaken. After all, the girl bought a lot of things and asked him if he was heavy, but like a true man, he denied everything. But he felt like a pathetic guy who was shopping with his girlfriend, even though Jilan was not his girlfriend. Jilan suddenly saw some stumps along the way and suggested to the guy that they should rest for a while. Sitting down on the stump, C just collapsed and relaxed. But he wondered why she wanted to become so strong when she is the princess. Jilan gave her the answer that her country is small and poor. Such a country can only survive with the help of another, bigger country. And as a princess, she can only become a mere tool and marry a man from a big family for the sake of politics. But she still has hope. She can fight for her nation when she becomes a spiritual deity. And everyone tells her to give up, but it's impossible. So she was happy to listen to his speech at the opening ceremony, where he said that he also wants to become a spiritual deity. But Sai decided to do her a favor and prepared a gift in advance, buying that sheep she had been eyeing. And holding out the sheep to her, he said that she had done a very good job, and soon they would practice together. When she took the sheep in her hands, she blushed with happiness and even let a tear fall when she felt her native land. She suddenly leaned on his shoulder and wished that the guy wouldn't see her like this. But Z didn't realize what she was doing. Coming to her senses, Jalan made up her mind and let the guy know that he was right, and suggested that they do it together. She gathered her strength and immediately stood up and challenged him. Sue had already hoped that this was the first time he would be confessed to love, And in reality, the dreams of many concubines in this world are only a sham. He decided to change that for the time being and said it was a bit late, and suggested that they should talk about it tomorrow. But Jilan started to deny and replied that now was the best time since no one was there. Moreover, she had already notified the academy administration, and a teacher would be coming soon to oversee the fight. And so he should stay anyway. But the teacher was distressed at this moment because he got overtime in the evening. And he realized that watching the duel of two first-year students who had just entered was very terrible. Seeing the first years surprised him, and he thought it would be interesting to watch. He remembered that in the entrance exam, these two had defeated a rank 5 foul. Sai immediately went to the teacher and wanted to refuse the duel. The teacher replied to him that it was not forbidden by the rules, but he would not be able to get away with it. Often duels are arranged between two arrogant disciples because of a quarrel, and to refuse to fight and lose a duel is shameful, which is why a bystander is needed. But he's actually curious to see their duel himself, so he'll deny his request, and if he doesn't fight, she'll finish him off. Sue asked her why she would do that, since he's only at rank 2. Jilin didn't believe he was at rank 2 and thought he was strong. And besides, it had been a long time since she had met someone who could make her fight at full strength. Unexpectedly, a strong wind thought. C felt this rush as well. The teacher immediately noticed that the female disciple could indeed utilize the wind element. In fact, everyone's spiritual energy could influence their naturally occurring abilities. And the most common is the element of fire. And the more complicated elements of lightning and ice, and the wind element has the weakest damage. If Jalan were to suddenly attack a level 5 foul beast with all his might, there wouldn't even be a bruise left afterward. However, if it was to talk about a large beast, an unclean beast with thick skin, he suddenly felt pain in his arm that was wounded by a gust of wind. And the teacher understood, to corrupt a human body, the force of the wind would be more than enough. Sue grasped his wounded arm and didn't realize when it succeeded in attacking him. The teacher informed them that although the wind damage was insignificant, it was hard to see exactly where she would attack. This is her characteristic feature, the ability to change the trajectory of her strike. And more importantly, many people do not put much hope in the techniques of the wind elemental. And that's why the battle tactics using the elemental are underdeveloped. But actually, Jilin already understands exactly how to fight using this element. C couldn't attack her back and only had to defend himself. He felt that the air when attacking was dense and fast, it was hard to see. And he doesn't have time to use defensive techniques. And if he got hit, he would die. Shalan started to shout that she would win. There was no way he would be able to dodge. And she wondered what he would do against such an attack. She remembered that he had used some kind of strange item to defeat a rank 5 fiend before, and he would probably start cheating now too. But Z had previously promised the academy principal not to get carried away and use normal techniques. So he decided to act smartly and headed in her direction. Jilin saw this and immediately realized that he had decided to shorten the distance to overpower her, and applied the dragon cyclone. Stopping in front of the cyclone, Z didn't realize what it was, and its attack turned out to be so huge. The teacher saw that even if the girl had a 4th rank, the dragon's cyclone technique was from the 6th rank category, and now he doesn't know how she was able to use it. And thinking on that scale, he found out that it's not the dragon's cyclone. She's so skillful with the power of the wind that she was able to create a visual effect of this technique. And it's actually a diversionary trick. Suddenly, through the huge cyclone, Z saw a black spot and immediately realized that here, something was wrong. There was a huge explosion that made nothing around him visible. After dispersing the smoke, Jilan saw the appearance of a person who was standing still and intact. In fact, Z realized that he was almost hit by an arrow and was saved. The teacher was shocked that the guy used his sword to repel the blow. And that's a superb use of the wind element and sword wielding. And now he doesn't even regret daring to be an observer. Such an entertaining fight. Jilan was very angry and couldn't believe that he could resist her using only a sword. And as she can see, the guy is just underestimating her. But Sue told her to make her think of how to fight against him. He has already seen the techniques she uses. Let her think of something else. And to make it easier, no matter how many unpredictable strikes she makes, he will stop them with just his sword. Jilan attacked him immediately with a wind attack, but the guy just swung his sword and reflected it. This was the first time teacher had seen a person fighting with a sword against the wind element. Plus, after he picked up the sword, his indecision disappeared, and he moves instinctively ahead of his consciousness. But how did this guy learn to handle the sword like this? The guy also remembered how his father started teaching him the basics of swordsmanship. At that moment, he rejoiced and realized that a real man should know how to wield a sword. The more he was in this world, the more he liked it. His father asked him to make sure he listened carefully. A sword is an extension of the hand, but they are not exactly alike, as a sword has a blade. It is mainly used to chop, cut, stab, and pierce. Sai got curious and started to wonder what else it could do. But his father replied that that was the end of it. You just have to practice hard. Sue was so curious that he asked if there were any special techniques. Anything at all, like the sickle moon technique or the lightning dragon technique. But for some reason, he always thought that his father was just weak. His father had made him realize that there was no such thing as fun. You can win without special techniques. And now they would train together. Sue thought it was like spiritual practices. Well, then he would come up with the techniques himself to learn swordsmanship. Standing up to his father, he warned him that he was about to attack. And with his speed, he began to attack. Seo was shocked that his father could do such a thing. And after being badly wounded, he felt like his father wanted him dead. His mother, after such a thing, started treating him and shouted at her husband, asking why he hit rashly. The husband replied to his wife that they had been practicing together, but he was so stubborn that he decided to be tougher. So at the age of 6, he started fencing and practiced for 10 years in all kinds of bad weather. And every day he enjoyed it more and more. And he tried sparring with his father, even getting deeply wounded. And now he realized that thanks to his father, now he is not afraid of her wind blows. Suddenly, Sue informed the girl that it was his turn to teach her a lesson for saying such loud words. Sue picked up perfect speed and realized that all he had to do was get closer to her, and he would see how she would manage to fend off his blow. Jalan didn't budge and retaliated with a rank 4 technique of Arrow of the Gods. Revealing her true essence, she formed an air warrior with an arrow in her hands. Master felt that this was the end of it, and Z's iron sword wouldn't be able to withstand the girl's strike. We need to stop them before anyone gets hurt. But Sai retaliated by sending a rank 1 technique thunderbolt at her. The teacher was shocked at what he saw and didn't understand how the guy was able to do that. Sue jumped towards the girl's attack and touched down with his sword. Seeing the end of the air that ran out, he noticed that as his sword began to shatter into small pieces. But at the last moment towards the end of his attack, he touched with his broken sword to her body. Sue decided to suggest to her that they should stay on the draw. But this was followed by Jilin's anger that smacked him in the head. Knocking the guy out with one blow, teacher walked over and said that Jilin had won. Pielzi wondered why she was so eager to be the best. The girl realized that in a real battle, all means are good, but he was very inattentive. And in any case, the winner has already been announced, so stop talking about it. But she wondered why she was embarrassed and what exactly he should not think about, also ran away. His teacher told him that according to the customs of the country of Jilan, she was of such an age that if she lost in a duel with a man, she had to agree to marry him. She started to think that they had corrupt customs. No wonder she wanted to win so badly. The teacher started laughing, hearing about the guy being sorry, and gave him a tip that if he was more careful, he probably would have had a wife by now. Sue replied that it probably wouldn't happen in this life, but it seemed to the teacher that she wasn't that interested in him either. However, as his teacher, he hastened to remind him that study was more important than early love. Sue agreed with the teacher, and in his head, he didn't even understand why only all teachers say the same thing. The next morning, So met her and suggested that they go to class together. Jalan didn't refuse him, and they headed to school together. But on the way, she spoke up and told him that at first she thought that the guy would only resort to those strange techniques, and didn't expect at all that he could be so skillful with a sword, and thinks she should have tried harder. Suddenly, passers-by saw them and started wondering if she was Jilin, and next to her is a second-ranked rookie. Does this weakling really think he can befriend her? He's probably just trying to butter her up. But the counselor told the guy that she had found out that the 5th-ranked fiend was defeated by Jilan and Yun, both of whom are 4th-ranked, and that this guy just happened to be there. He got into their academy by proxy. He set it up on purpose. He has no conscience at all. Jalan also heard everything, and seeing the guy's reaction, she asked him if he didn't care what people said about him. She replied that he was used to it, and when he used to go to school, he was always treated like that. But now he is stronger than them, and he doesn't care about their opinion. But Jilin laughed and thought that if she didn't know him, she would think that he was like Chi Jung, and she wouldn't be able to resist smacking him. But suddenly they got into a situation where one of the guys started hitting on the girl. She was asking him to let her go. The guy was asking Lin Bo to make her bow as a greeting, or is she saying that she doesn't wish to meet them here? Lin Bo had told Gao Chen that he couldn't harm her at school, and she had no reason to obey him. C sees her and remembers that Lin Bo is from a classmate, and he thinks she's in trouble. Suddenly, Yun came over to them and told them that Gao Chen is the eldest son of the Gao family, and Lin Bo's family can be said to be an offshoot of the Gao family. And Lin Bo's father is a master swordsman, so the status of the previous generation of the Lin family has improved greatly. But Lin Bo's father has already become an illness, so the Gao family is harassing them again. C suggested him to go together and help her. Yun said that the relationship between the aristocrats is very complicated. It would be uncomfortable for him to interfere. But he could go on his own, and if necessary, he would support him. Hearing such words, Jilan thought he was being hypocritical, but Yun considered it as a compliment. Shia warmed up on the way and let them know that he would resolve things now. And most of all, he hates these types who take advantage of their position to oppress others. Sia walked up to them and asked them to end this spectacle. And Chen is a grown-up guy, but hurting a girl, that's just considered a disgrace. Chen replied to him that he was meddling in the wrong business. Who is he anyway, a second-rate brat? And probably thinks since he's socializing with Yun and Jilan, he'll be afraid of him. The disciples started to say that C was serious about defying Gao, and he may be a third ranker, but he's already quite strong. And the redneck doesn't really understand how to behave, and probably thinks that in this academy, where powerful and noble people study, someone will stand up for him. Even Lin Yun can't afford to pick a fight with Gao Chen, and in his opinion, this time C is in big trouble. Chen has shown that this guy is not worthy of his attention, and let him get the hell out of here. But Su stood his ground and asked him to get his dirty hands off her before he broke them for him. Chen changed his mind, and at first he didn't want to bicker with him because of Yun, but now he wouldn't be allowed to leave quietly. And he even turned to Yun and see if he had anything to say, or if he had decided to become an enemy of their family. Yun replied to the guy that he got it all wrong. It's his and Z's business. He won't interfere until they start fighting to the death. Chen asked the guy if he heard that his protector wouldn't help him. And don't forget, the students of this academy aren't such rednecks unlike some. But C angered him and heard that all they need to do is not to kill each other, and then everything will be fine. Shen's men immediately turned towards him and, showing their strength, notified him to get ready. He immediately noticed that there were 2 with third rank and 3 with second rank, and he wasn't even impressed with that. They should be more serious. Siu stood still and applied the first-ranked glaciation technique, and realized that by controlling his spiritual energy, it was possible to make the ice thin and smooth. After applying his glaciation technique, the guys couldn't stay on their feet and collapsed to the ground. And then the guy started the first-rank fire flow technique and directed the entire stream of fire at them. Chen thought that this spiritual power was so weak that the flames didn't even scorch their hair. But Z warned him that he didn't say he wanted to fry them. He only wanted to melt the ice, and asked the boys if they knew that water was a great guide. Chen decided to find out what a conductor meant. Z decided to demonstrate to them and used the second-rank electroshock technique and let it through the water. The guys didn't have time to move before a huge amount of current went through their bodies. The guys didn't even have time to open their mouths before they passed out and fell into the water. Sai thought they were just cretins, and there were enough kindergarten techniques to defeat them. The students began to wonder what had just happened. They didn't understand anything. How did a guy take down 5 people in an instant? And of course it's impossible. He must have used some kind of trick. And it's impossible for one guy to take down 5 people. And this guy only used rank 1 and 2 techniques. And can they really do that too? But of course, whether it would work or not, he thought that they were useless techniques. Who would even use them in a duel? Chen got angry and started calling the guy a freak, and asked Yun if he sicked that puppy on purpose to interfere. Yun replied that he had previously said it was their squabble, which had nothing to do with him. And Chen didn't get hurt after all, but still has some grievances against him and also insulted his friend. Or is he just fed up with life? Chen was very frightened after these words and, leaving purposely, hit C's shoulder. Sai approached the girl and asked if she was all right. Bo replied that she was fine and thanked him for his help. But Chen threatened her not to think that since she was interceded for this time, she was free. Sue wouldn't let him say that and advised him that he was talking a lot and they were probably about to have another repeat of their fight. Bo grabbed onto Sue's hand and said that he was a good man. And they had only met a couple times in class and he wanted to help her. And after all, it was her business. She needed to finish him off herself. Bo took up her sword and shouted to Gao Chen that she was challenging him to a duel. Chen got angry and let them know that they both let themselves get too much. And Linbo, disrespecting their bloodline, position in the hierarchy, and now openly opposing him and disrespecting his family in the first place. And a low-grade family has produced an equally low-grade family. Yun saw what this asshole was up to and notified them to be careful. Chen charged up with great energy and attacked them, saying that those people who cross him were not worthy to live. But Z thought that Chen just felt empowered and decided to overpower the girl by suddenly attacking. Yun thought that the matter was bad. The Gao family uses unusual fire in their techniques. It's much stronger than ordinary fire. But to Zhen, this was just nothing. She had met many amazing swordsmen, so when she saw the pose Linbo had taken, it was clear to her. And Linbo was actually much stronger than Gao Chen. She suddenly drew her sword and repelled his attack in one move. Chen was shocked by what he saw and didn't understand how she was able to do that. Bo had gained the perfect speed for herself to deliver her attack to the target. Chen didn't have time to counterattack and applied her defense to avoid hurting her body. But Linbo just touched his defense with her sword and easily shattered it. Linbo didn't want to let this go unpunished and swung her sword straight at the guy's head. But at the last moment, a voice rang out, saying that they were not yet at peace. This level of magic had just repelled Linbo's attack, and the two of them didn't realize who had come and interfered with it. The magic had turned into a living being, which was heading straight for the girl. C sensed that it was a very strong rank 7 breathing technique, and Linbo was in danger. He ran towards her with great speed and decided to help her so that she wouldn't get hurt. Stopping, he thought, who did this? And struck with the strength of a rank 7 technique and didn't even intend to stop. At this moment, a teacher who was fluent in rank 7 techniques was passing by in the hallway of the school, and Z immediately sensed this strength in him and realized that he was the one who wanted to kill Linbo. But Z suddenly felt that the old man was attacking them again, and out he really is the enemy. The protagonist thought about it and decided to borrow Bo's sword because he needed to deal with the old man. Bo didn't refuse him and handed him her sword, but Sai realized that to make the flames strong, the wind had to be blowing. He tried to do it, but saw that he wouldn't succeed, and the flame was too big and his strength wouldn't be enough. The old man decided to ask the lad, did he really think someone like him would be able to resist anything? And for a village kid, he's too arrogant. But he actually knew that it was normal for him to fight at full strength with his disciple. That's why he provoked him, to wait for the right moment when the flames would surround him. And the point is to cut off all their avenues of retreat. And the flames have almost surrounded him, and now he won't be seen. Sai picked the perfect moment and throwing a grenade at him, asked him to catch it. Blowing up the old man, he saw that Bo was in danger too and rushed to save her. Grabbing her, he did a somersault and fell to the ground. Jilan ran up to him and decided to make sure he was safe and sound. C replied that he was fine, but the explosive impact was too strong and Linbo lost consciousness. Yun knew the old man and turning to Gao Shijin asked why he was setting all this up. Ao replied that he was in charge of discipline in this academy and he needed to teach those who disrupted order a lesson. And are there any other questions? Ji walked up to the guy and decided to ask, who is this old man? Yun replied that he was Gao Shijin, a teacher from the disciplinary committee and also Gao Chen's uncle. She found out, is this old man taking revenge by covering himself with his position? Aristocrats are so cruel, he would rather go back to his village than be like them. Su decided to ask the old man, is he trying to teach him a lesson? And on this view, the old man is the kind of person who gets people in trouble. Gao disagreed and asked the guy again, what did he say? People started to wonder if Gao Chen's uncle was really like that. And how is that possible? Why is he even teaching at this school? And if he is, does he dare to go tell him about it? Chen approached his uncle, but Gao responded by saying that it was none of his business and let him hurry to class. But he stopped them and told them that Gao Chen had caused trouble for Linbo, and they started a duel. And since he's a teacher, he needs to deal with what he's done. And secondly, during the duel, he was biased in favor of Gao Chen and attacked Lingbo, And does the old man think he can get away with it now? The disciples were surprised to learn that there are people who are not afraid to speak out. And now Z seems like a completely different person to them. Even though he's a second ranker, he defeated 5 people, and he was able to survive Gao Shijin's attack. He is still strong, and now he believes that he's the guy who finished off that 5th-ranked brute. Gaio replied to the guys that in order to hold a duel, an official application must be submitted, and a witness must be present. Only then can it be held. And they didn't do any of that, so that's why he stopped them. He told the teacher that Gaochen had raised his hand on her first if anyone needed to be stopped. It was him, and he almost killed Linbo. Gao started to deny it and said it was nonsense. And if he really wanted to kill her, what do they think? The guy would have stopped him. And if he hadn't stopped, would he have been able to get away so quietly? And he's only a rookie, and how he hoped to repel his blow. Chen told them to stop embarrassing themselves. They would talk to him more next time. She smiled and thought, what next time? And released some fire beams directly at them. Gao applied his defense and thought, what is this guy up to? The fire attacks were destroying his defenses. And he realized that even if he instantly used a defense technique, its power would be insufficient. How come, after all, he had a rank 7 defense? And he didn't even realize how he didn't have time to react to this weakling strike. Chen saw this and was scared for his uncle, for this was very unexpected. C pounced on them and questioned the guy. Does he think he dares to tell others what to do? And right now they would settle scores with him. He got so close to him that he swung his sword and simply knocked Chen out with a single blow, without even letting him breathe. Gao didn't like that and threatened to finish him off. But Sai wasn't intimidated by this and suggested to the old man that they figure out who was better. Seeing that he flew at him, the guy managed to turn around and threw 3 grenades right at him. But here came the director himself and caught all 3 explosives and showed that it was no task, and if he blew up those 3 trinkets, they would have to repair the training building again. Gao was also surprised by his arrival, and the principal grabbed his arm and blocked his attack. The principal turned to Gao's teacher and let him know that he had overstepped his bounds already. Gao tried to justify himself to the principal, but he wouldn't let him do so and bent his arm and knocked him to the ground. The principal told him that their grandfather was a very good friend of his. Out of respect for him, he would not find out what had happened here. However, he would suspend him from the disciplinary committee. Teacher Gao realized his mistake and accepted his punishment. Meanwhile, the principal turned to C and asked him to follow him. Mentally, Z asked Yun to take care of Linbo for now. And after that, the principal ordered Chen to go home and think about his behavior, and they would let him know when he could return to his studies. But Chen was very angry with C and was drilling his teeth, and the main character was bullying him and asking him to punch him. The students immediately started discussing everything in front of everyone, but they didn't even notice that the teacher and his grandson were still beside them. But they suddenly lost their fears in front of them and realized that Gao's family would still want to take revenge on Sui. Gao picked up his grandson and asked if he was okay. Chen replied that he was in one piece and realized that he had dragged his uncle into all of this. Gao ordered his uncle to get home first and get a good night's rest. They'd still have time to get even with him. The headmaster was silent halfway through the academy, and turning to Su, complimented that his trinkets were quite interesting, and he could leave them with him, for he wished to examine them more closely. But Sai asked the headmaster not to tell everyone about his secret weapon. But the director let him know that if he had been late, the guy would have blown up Gao Qixin, but he was very close to him as he thought to save himself. Si replied that he didn't think about it. Gao Qi had decided to kill him, and he thought they would die together, so he fought to the end. The principal thought and told the guy that he was quite strong, and his parents had ranked 10. There were prospects waiting for him here, and he should be more careful about his life. But why did he attack him? And no matter how you look at it, it's weird, so what really happened? CEO realized that the director suspected something. So what should he do? If he told him everything as it was, he might say something unnecessary. But on the other hand, he didn't want to lie. So he tried to tell him everything. But the principal stopped him and told him that every person has his own secrets. It's okay if the student doesn't want to tell. But he wondered another thing. Why did he choose to stand up for this girl Linbo? And he actually thought that Z would be with Shilin. Did he really think of gathering a whole harem for himself? He was shy and didn't realize what was going on with teachers in this world. and replied that he hates it when someone is bullied without anyone wanting to help. The principal asked if that was the reason he decided to intervene, even though he could have gotten into trouble himself. Seo replied that he might not understand it, but he used to be cowardly and untrusting. And there are so many injustices in the world. Everyone makes many mistakes, but since he was weak and timid, he couldn't change anything. And the more one hated others, the more they hated him, and one had to distance oneself and try to escape from reality. Sai realized that it didn't really matter what world to live in and what to do. Only when the state of mind came to normal, then one could really start to appreciate life. So he decided that he would do what he thought was right, without any compromise. And if he didn't have the strength to do it, he would try until he became very strong. And his dream is to become a spiritual deity of the 10th rank. After talking to the principal, Sai headed outside. But he was already dying of fatigue because classes had just started and he was already having trouble after trouble. Why can't he just spend time with his friends, go out with someone, and enjoy his school life as if he's only getting into trouble, and the principal's looking out for him? And he wanted to remind him again that he's on a special account, so he should try not to bother others, and more importantly, he shouldn't mess with school property. He's all pissed off about it, and he doesn't understand how it is not to deface property. Here's to carving the word morning on the school gate so that he can stop being late for class already. A student was passing by at that moment and seeing Sai's actions. He thought he had lost his mind. But Sai thought that entering the school had its advantages. He would be able to understand what people regarded as strong and weak. And he should reach the rank of Jalan and Yoon on his own. Plus, he has a lot of combat experience and has the technique to easily defeat rank 6. But the most interesting thing about this is whether this is enough to be a worthy son of Lin Zun, even though he's not that strong yet. So he will continue to train or maybe make a new weapon. And by taking advantage of the scientific and technological achievements of his previous world, he can create weapons that were never known here. And with it, the battles would be more varied. But still, it's not his own power, it's the power of the weapon. But suddenly, someone began to greet him. But Sai was in his thoughts and thought about how he needed to train a lot while he was young. But after calculating everything, he stayed on the fact that only children should choose, and adults can do whatever they want. Hearing an unfamiliar voice, he turned around and saw a girl in front of him saying hello to him. She introduced herself as his classmate and called herself Hua Yi. He apologized and said that he was thinking and didn't hear her calling him. Hua Yi began to tell him that yesterday she had heard talk about how brave he was, about Gao Chen getting hurt, and about the troubles of teacher Gao, who seems like a scary person to her as well. She got embarrassed and decided to ask her why she sought him out. Hoa blushed after this question and was silent for a moment, and Sue immediately thought that she liked him. But Hua took out a thing from her pocket and said that she had a letter for Sue. He was shocked and couldn't believe it, and thought it was actually a love letter. Hana handed him the letter and decided to leave right away. But Sue was glad that there were many beauties in his group. At that moment, Yoon snuck up on him and asked if Sue had thought about how many beautiful girls were in his group. Sedu got really scared and asked him not to scare him like that anymore. Yoon replied that he caught him off guard and whether he was thinking about it on purpose or not. But really, it's time for class. He should come soon. He had even seen the letter, and there was no need to be afraid. He wouldn't run away from it. And moreover, it's not necessarily a love letter exactly. It could also be a challenge to a duel. So realized that it was logical, really. But still, he decided to take a look. After everything, he went to the hospital to check on Bo. Opening the door, he ran into Hua. The girl immediately asked him to come in. Sue inquired from her, what is she usually here for while there are no classes? Hua replied that yes, she has an aptitude for healing techniques, so she works at the doctor's office and also goes to classes. Opening the curtain, she motioned for him to come in. But Bo apologized to him that he had to come in person. She wanted to seek him out herself first to thank him. Hua examined him and told him that she had no injuries, but there had been a concussion and her body had not yet fully recovered. Bo was upset that Hua wouldn't let her get out of bed, so he would have to sit down for now. Xie replied that it was no big deal. She needed to get better. So why did she call him? Lin replied that she saw him as a strong swordsman, but he doesn't have his own personal sword. So she thought she must have a sword at home that would suit him. And that sword is sitting on her shelf, and it's called the Devil's Sword of Oblivion. Sai was shocked to hear about the demonic Sword of Oblivion, Lin confirmed and said that although it is called demonic, it doesn't start controlling the wielder to kill people. The protagonist wondered why it was called that. The girl answered that probably because no one in this world is able to understand this sword and use it. And she doesn't know how to explain it properly, but she has a feeling that he will be able to use it. Sue wondered why she thought that. The girl replied that yesterday, Sai borrowed her sword while fighting Teacher Gao to save her. And when it was revealed that it was a battle to the death, he didn't even raise an eyebrow. Even his gaze didn't change. And then she realized that even though he was worried, he didn't care if he stayed alive, and he had completely isolated himself from the outside world. But she asks him to just not get mad for what she says. It's just her thoughts. Sue reassures her that it's okay, and he understands what she's talking about. That's why she feels like the demon sword will suit him. But Lin told him that they will know for sure when he sees it. Tomorrow afternoon, let him come to her house. But after the guy left, Huo said that this sword is her father's gift to her. It's okay that she is giving it to Z. Lin replied that she thought it was fate. This sword used to belong to her father, then he gave it to her. And after meeting C, she realized that he would be able to get the favor of the sword. And Hua thought that their meeting was fated. But Lin started to deny and didn't mean it, and no need to talk nonsense. But Sai thought that the demonic oblivion sword sounded cool. And if it became his, he would be able to fight at full strength. He even cried out of happiness and felt that it was destined by fate. The next day he arrived at Lin's place and saw more of the dojo in front of him. Lin was already healthy and met him on the doorstep. Sai immediately began to inquire about her well-being. Lin thanked him and replied that she was fine, and otherwise Hua wouldn't have let her out. But Hua considered it as if she was keeping her in prison. She was a little surprised that Hua came too. The girl was shocked that she and he had known her for one day, and he had saved her so heroically. And the very next day, she invites him to her house. A lonely guy and a girl would be alone in the same room. Little matter what might happen. Lin shut her mouth immediately and thought she was teasing her again. Sai started to look around and noticed that there were less students here and thought they were on vacation. But Lin told him that he had heard that her family was an offshoot of the Gao family after all, and at first they had no position in society. But during the time of her father, an excellent swordsman, this Lin Shinliu dojo was founded here. And now her father is too weak, and he only needs peace and rest. So the dojo has fallen into disrepair. But Hua turned to her and made it clear that there was no need to tell her everything. Lin immediately understood and wouldn't talk about it now. And the Devil Oblivion sword is kept in this room. Seeing the sword in the room, he questioned, is it a katana or what? But he looked closer and realized that it was a two-handed long sword called a miao dao. So he decided to just hold it in his hands. But when he touched it, he immediately heard a quote from the sword that said, what they need, they don't know. What they know, they don't need. Sai was shocked that the sword was talking, and he could hear it in his head. Suddenly, the sword asked the guy to tell him which iPhone came out. The main character didn't realize what was going on. After all, first the sword quotes Faust, and now he asks about the iPhone, and he thinks that at least the 30th iPhone should have come out. And suddenly the sword got excited and said that he finally met someone who understands him and offered to chat because he's dying of boredom. Sue blushed in surprise at the moment and thought that wasn't cool at all. Hana noticed and shared with her friend that the setting wasn't that mysterious, but Lin thought that he would be fine. At this moment, Sai only heard strange questions from the sword, which were about the guy's personal life. Sue couldn't stand it and threw the sword back on the shelf and decided that they weren't right for each other. But the sword was asking him to stop and not make mistakes, and he would ask him one question. And the sword found out from the guy if he was planning on putting together a harem. And if that was the case, he would definitely be with him. Sai turned to Lin and told him that despite all her hospitality, there was no way he would be able to wield that sword. Lin was saddened after his words and she felt sorry for it. The sword at this moment was shouting to the guy that he could go back and see for himself what a good kid he was. And the Lin family's problems weren't easy to solve. He could use his strength. But C still didn't understand why he could still hear him. He had Bluetooth built into him 100 lie. Sword replied that this guy was just stubborn, and he's a prominent devil, and the guy pissed him off. Suddenly, Sai decided that if he got farther away, the signal would be interrupted. Sue asked the girl where her father got that sword. Lin replied that she didn't know exactly. It is her father's second sword, but he used it very little. And her father could defeat almost anyone. But one of the students heard her bragging and suggested to her that she should ask her father to go out for a walk. Lin got curious and asked him who he was. The guy replied that he had heard about the glory of their dojo and had come to challenge her. The girl told him that she didn't expect trouble to come so soon and told Sai that it was time for him to leave. She would deal with him herself. Sai was surprised to hear about the trouble and wondered if it happened often. Lin replied that their family situation had improved little by little thanks to her father. And everyone recognized his power, so masters often came to them to exchange experiences, but now only people like them. But C assumed they came from the Gao family to settle scores. One of the guys replied that since he knew everything, it was time to get to the point. The guy decided to ask them if they thought the Lin family was still the same as before. She crossed the Gao family. That's why they came here. Lin got angry after saying that and replied that she was accepting the challenge. Grabbing his sword, Z saw this and stopped her. He told her that these henchmen were weaklings, and they must have come to ferret out what their enemies were capable of. And she wasn't fully recovered yet, so he would help her deal with these scum. But the guys were starting to find out what kind of nonsense he was talking about. Now he's about to find out the power of his Sword of Dawn. The guys all got into perfect speed together and shouted that they would show him now what they could do. He stopped in place and raised his sword to use the flow wound technique against them. And it was a technique his father had taught him, and said that they did realize how great their father's care was and wouldn't dare not show respect. The girls were shocked by its power and didn't even realize it was that strong. Knocking everyone out, Sai walked over to see what happened to them. Lin replied that the guy was really strong, although they were weak, but they were not inferior to rank 3 in combat technique. And if you compare it to ordinary people, they were a head taller than other warriors. Sai was surprised that ordinary people were the most numerous in this world. After all, in his previous world, they would have been considered skilled warriors and they would have defeated him there. The protagonist started punching the guy in the face and asking him to wake up. He started asking him who sent them here. The guy woke up and begged for mercy and told him that they were paid by the Gao family. But who exactly gave the instructions, he doesn't know. And they were using them as whipping boys after all, and truly, blessed are the ignorant. But one of the Lin family was standing nearby and said that this time they had really hit a nerve with the Gao family, and now this old dojo was unlikely to last long. But Lin was angry, and upon seeing Lu Xiao shouted that he was a traitor, and he dare not come here. Xiao didn't understand why she was saying that. Because he was her father's disciple, the dojo might close. That's why he came back to see how they were doing. And if she has no place to live, he might have mercy and take her and this old man in. The old man would live in the barn, and she would become his concubine maid. But C got angry after saying that and immediately attacked him. She saw this and decided to find out if this guy was a new student in their dojo. And he's just about to get into a fight. It's kind of annoying. It doesn't really matter how he fights, because he will still lose to him. Xiao swung his sword and after destroying his opponent's sword, just put it to his face. She started to smile and decided to ask the guy what he was going to do next. Yi replied that he had many ideas on how exactly to defeat him, but he had broken his sword and now he was demanding compensation from him before they could continue. And what is this? This is the second sword. Is he cursed after all? But although it can't be that, after all it's Lin Bo's sword, which means he only has one broken sword so far. She started laughing nonstop and didn't even realize when only this decaying dojo had such an interesting guy. Xiao introduced himself and revealed that he was the oldest of the fellow students of this dojo, but he had rebelled against the mentor a long time ago. Xia also introduced himself in response and revealed that he was a student of the Royal Academy. Xiao notified Lin Bo that they went against the Gao family. No one will help them. If she wants to keep this dojo, next week they must participate in the tournament and win it. Lin inquired from him, "Did he come here to say that?" Xiao replied that originally he just wanted to be done with this place, but now he sees that things aren't so hopeless here. And if he were her, he would have asked the guy to participate in the tournament instead of her. Hana started laughing because she heard Mr. Lu bluntly say that it was Lin's boyfriend. Lin apologized to Sai for inconveniencing him again and not having to listen to what he was saying to him. Sai apologized and let her know that he broke her sword. Lin replied that there was nothing wrong with it. The sword, though not bad, it wasn't very expensive. It had served her well, and she wasn't sorry that it was broken. But she wondered what kind of sword this Xiao had. Why was it so sharp? Lin replied that it is her father's first sword, divine cicada singing sword. Now the dojo was left without any support, and they only have the devil sword of oblivion to resist his sword. But C realized that if that was the case, should he try to wield it again? The girl replied that she didn't want to involve him in all this again. She was already grateful that he wanted to help, and she had been ready for something like this for a long time. If he really succeeded in controlling the sword, then she would ask him for a favor to overpower Xiao again. Then he would help her out once more. And if you think carefully, that's very selfish. So she asked them that they wouldn't see her off and would see her tomorrow at school. Xiao was surprised, but suddenly the attackers turned to him and said that if there were no more questions for them, they could go already. But Z decided to find out from them that he had said earlier that the Gao family would continue to send people like them here like this to bother Lin Bo. But after a while, Hua came to the courtyard and saw that the guy decided to teach them a lesson so that others wouldn't pry anymore. C replied that he had purposely undressed them and thought it would work. But suddenly Hua turned to him and notified him that she had a small request for him. Su replied that he already understood which one. Even though Lin Bo asked him not to interfere, he can't just leave her alone. Hua blushed with excitement and didn't expect him to be so kind. At this rate, he will definitely fall in love with him soon. Sia asked her so she shouldn't joke around like that, and asked her if she had seen her father today. Hua replied that her father, Ling Lei, has been sitting at home and not receiving guests for a very long time. She once heard that he was once badly injured, and now he is not as strong as he used to be. So what exactly happened? Hua was surprised that he didn't know. And when the great battle between the humans and the undead ended, the demons and their allied forces faced off in a decisive battle. The demon commander had sent his subordinate to lead a squad of wolves of the undead down the western part of the wasteland to suddenly attack the allies who had arrived as reinforcements. And Headland single-handedly overpowered their squad and killed the dispatched commander. But he was badly wounded and has been unable to hold a sword ever since. He realized that the old man was injured during the battle. Shouldn't he be treated as a hero? And why isn't he being treated with proper respect? Hana told him that aristocrats are not as honest and fine people as he thinks. The Gao family absolved themselves of all responsibility for their strategic mistakes and blamed Head Lin for the losses, crediting the entire unit. Sai thought it was just a sad story. Nothing is new under the sun. And so Gao Chen and Gao Qi's terrible character is hereditary. Hua inquired from him, what is he going to do? C smiled and replied that he would wipe that Gao family into powder. But one of the teachers got angry and said that he understood that Lin Bo was preparing for the palace tournament. But why wasn't Sai attending his classes? Yun asked Hua in a whisper. Su was headed to Lin Bo's house, right? The girl replied that she didn't know where he was. Yun thought and realized that Su is indeed unusual, doing what he wants, getting into trouble. At this time, Lin asked the protagonist if he would like to try again. Su replied that he didn't know what others felt when taking this demonic sword, but he didn't feel anything bad. Taking it in his hands, he revealed that nothing happened. Lin was also surprised, for she knew that when people touched it, they would start having some strange thoughts. And if they didn't let go of it right away, they could vomit, and in the worst case, they could lose their minds. Sai held the sword in his hands and didn't know why it was silent. But suddenly he thought of the tournament and asked her to tell her. Lin replied that this tournament was a competition between the best warriors, although it had not been held for many years. And at first there were two schools of equal strength, a school of martial arts and a school of spiritual practices. And both used spiritual techniques, the difference being that the warrior develops his own strength, hardens his body. Combining that with the techniques, he becomes incredibly strong. And mages in turn strengthen their spiritual powers, and when using spiritual practices, and can achieve various magical effects. But C now seems to be absolutely all mages, although there are sections in the academy that study techniques, but they are rather studied as something auxiliary. Lin replied that that's right. Originally, there were schools of martial arts and spiritual practices, but one day one person changed that once and for all, and learning spiritual practices became easy at the beginning. Anyone who practiced diligently could reach a certain level very quickly. And that's why all people are magicians now. At the same time, no innovations in martial arts have appeared, so few people study them except those who have an innate talent for them. Even though their dojo is very good and shows excellent results during the tournament, it has still fallen into disrepair. Sai got a lot of information for himself and decided to find out who exactly changed the attitude towards spiritual practices. And apparently he is very powerful. But what exactly did he do? Lin was surprised and asked the guy, "Did he fall from the moon?" He doesn't know the most basic things. Sai closed his eyes and thought that his irresponsible parents should be blamed for this. The girl said that he was the first teacher of spiritual practices and also the founder of their school. He divided spiritual practices according to their characteristics. He was the one who established the concept of ranks. And he also compiled many theoretical textbooks and uses his teaching methods in their school. He is the first genius in the last million years. Siyu considered that this was just his approach. Suddenly, the sword suddenly spoke up and confirmed that he thought correctly, and he alike came from another world. And he may not realize his famous saying, "He is very lonely." Sai was shocked and thought him to be from the generation of those who are eternally sad. Sword asked him that he shouldn't talk like that. Maybe they were reading Zhang Ailing. Lin was suddenly surprised and seeing the guy's movements asked if he was all right, or is he under the influence of the sword? Sai replied that everything was fine and there was no need to worry, and he himself didn't realize why he suddenly decided to talk. Sword replied that at first he wanted to ignore him out of resentment, but he was too talkative to hold back. And to be honest, you can't use spiritual techniques in the tournament, and he won't be able to defeat Lu Xiao for now. But considering that he is so diligent and a good guy, he will give him a hint. He needs to meet with Ling Lei. She thought about it and asked the girl to introduce him to her father. Lin asked him to follow her, and she really needs to take him to him if he wants to inherit the Devil Sword. Lin went to the door and turned to her father, and her father asked Sai to come in alone. Sai entered the room and apologized for disturbing him. The warrior immediately asked the boy what was his name. Su introduced himself and told him that he was Lin Bo's classmate. But suddenly he saw a sword blade in front of his eyes and was surprised. The protagonist immediately raised his sword to defend himself and didn't know how the old man had struck a blow without a sword, and realized that simply combining the thoughts of the sword and a bit of ice cold, a substance as sharp as a sword blade was produced, and almost died of fear. The warrior said that not bad and a normal person would not even feel the approaching blow, but he not only felt, but also had time to react, and says his name is Sai Jin. And since he is Seiyi's son, this time his naive little girl has found a worthwhile man. And does Sai really want to marry her? Z was surprised and didn't know why the Lord said everything so immediately, or whether he didn't like Lin Bo arranging their meeting at all. Did the master decide to ask the guy if he didn't like her daughter? Or does he think she has a bad figure? After all, a guy has to think ahead. Now she's still in the growing up stage. And her mother is a shapely beauty, so Lin Bo has a chance to be like her too. C apologized and replied that Lin Bo will decide for herself who she wants to marry. The master now realized that her daughter actually had a character and liked him. And maybe she wasn't the only one in their school who paid attention to him. And this guy looks like him in his years. But Sue at this moment was thinking what was wrong with this old man. But then the sword spoke up, and he didn't mean to brag. But apparently the guy doesn't remember who he took in as a friend. And as it happens, his master has a weak psyche. The master directly informed the boy that there's no way he can defeat Lu Xiao right now. And of course, there is a chance if he uses his sword, but it can only be inherited, and he doesn't want to marry his daughter. And maybe he can be his godfather, and that's a great way out. But C didn't know what the point of that was. His father is a spiritual deity, even if he is superior to him in swordsmanship, and he has rank 9. He had been learning sword skills from him for 10 years. If he can't defeat Lu Xiao after that, what would he be given a few days of training from him? The master immediately asked if the guy seriously didn't want to learn the Devil Moon ice flow technique to use with his sword, and followed by other dojo techniques, the techniques of the setting moon, sunset, wind, fall, rain, fog source, and the techniques for his unique Devil Moon sword are even more powerful. Sai realized that he could learn a lot and called him Godfather. The master started laughing and knew that his father, who could only swing his sword like a stick, had not taught him any techniques. Sai replied that there was nothing to be done about it. He said victory could be won without special techniques. Mr. agreed and said that after decades of training, all these techniques will be useless. And his father is a swordsmanship genius, so he does not understand the value of these techniques. And fencing masters themselves all their life try to find out for themselves what is more effective. They improve a certain technique to then pass it on to their descendants. And thanks to this, it is easier for the next generations to master the fencing art faster. They improve the already created and become stronger than their predecessors. Sai remembered that the tournament was next week and worried about whether he would have time to master the technique and whether it would help him in his fight with Lu Xiao. The master told him that he was gifted and already had the right skills. If he continued practicing around the clock with no breaks for sleep or food, he might be able to do it. Su wondered if he was really that weak. The master replied with his sword of oblivion. He had already determined how much time they could extract from 1 week here. The sword also notified the master that he needed to estimate Sai's spiritual strength, but tentatively 1 year. Sai didn't understand and asked his weapon what he meant. The sword replied that his master was just a chatterbox, but Sai was startled and asked, "What kind of spell is this?" Suddenly squinting his eyes, Sai found himself in a different place and didn't realize where he was. The sword answered his master that his soul was now under his control and could consider that they were in the dream world, in the subconscious. And here time goes differently than in the real world, and Sai must be strong in spirit. Then 1 year here would fly by in 1 second of real time, and of course, there was no point in actually going to such extremes. Su was shocked and thought it was just like the movie Inception. Sword replied that that's exactly what he meant, and actually didn't even think he would miss this world. He almost forgot this place. But suddenly a man came up to him and was very surprised, and didn't think it was true that if the people who moved to their world from this one, he was shocked to see Mr. Lin Lei. The Lord thought that the sword guy just had a convenient ability. Not only would they have enough time here, but he would also be able to take him to the limit of his ability. Si decided to ask the Lord why he couldn't teach swordsmanship to Lin Bo. Lei replied that he was no longer able to hold a sword, but things were different in this dream world created by his sword. Besides, the Devil Moon Ice Stream technique requires a very strong body. Lin Bo is fragile. This technique is not suitable for her. And they will start with the efficiency of one-on-one training of sufficient height. As long as the sword guards his consciousness, by dying he will be reborn. Su clarified, "What do you mean by dying?" Le made his attack, and the tip of the sword grazed the guy's cheek. The guy was surprised and thought that the Lord was just getting carried away. And since he could create such an awesome place, couldn't he bring some systematicness to the practice of swordsmanship? And why is it that he can do whatever he wants? Lei replied to the guy that it wasn't fool's games for him. If he wanted to become stronger, he needed to study conscientiously. The sword also apologized to his master after all. There was no exercise system in his world of time. That's why he can't recreate what he's asking for, so one must show respect to the established customs. The next day, Hua and the Lord's daughter sat in front of the doors. Hua was surprised that Sei was still there, but Lin replied that that was right and he was already on his 3rd day, and she hoped he was okay. But it turned out to be much worse. Sai was badly hurt by his training. Li asked him to stop lolling around. It was time to get to work. Su rose to his feet through the pain and rested his whole body on his sword, and begged him to help him heal his wounds just a little. Suddenly, he realized that only now he had realized that his father had made him feel better when he trained him. Otherwise, he would have died tens of thousands of times. Sai gathered his strength, and holding out his sword towards the Lord, asked that they try again. This time, he would surely defeat him. Lei thought it was amazing because the guy had died so many times and still hadn't lost his fighting spirit. And Si is a wonderful son. The master realized that even if the guy knows that everything here is a mirage, even if he knows that you can't really die here, still, the very feeling of death is realistic, and anyone would feel fear and try to avoid it. And is it possible to keep a cold heart and sobriety of mind at his age? And what's more important is getting up from his seat. And as the Lord sees it, this guy is not afraid of his death at all, and it's time for him to change his strategy. So he decided to change his technique with the Devil Moon Ice Stream, final form. Raising his sword above his head, he created a real space object above him. Sai didn't realize what it was, and it's definitely still only a swordsmanship. Li remembered that the guy already knew the technique, and now he needed to try to reflect its final form. Seeing the huge planet in front of his eyes, Z simply froze in place with astonishment. As a result, attacks started coming from different directions, and the guy tried to reflect them all. But when he opened his eyes, he didn't even realize where he was. Everything around him was realistic. Li said that this technique forces his body to reach its speed limit, so that his body does not affect the sword in any way. He must become one with it. He had spent his whole life perfecting this technique. The power of the moon and stars was gathered in it. Li swung his huge sword at him and decided to find out exactly what it was that Si wished for with all his heart. Su felt that he would not be able to reflect in time, and he would probably die now. But as he felt a shiver run through his body, he realized he was dead. And for some reason, strange thoughts popped into his head, and he began to fear death. But he never really felt that his life meant anything in this world. And his life was just worthless and useless. And even when his mother left him, even then he realized he doesn't even remember what his parents look like. And that's why it doesn't matter if he's alive. No one would really be sad if he died. But now he is no longer the same. His meaning of life, his destiny and goals are all his own to determine. Xi gained tremendous strength after such thoughts and resisted against Mr. Lu's sword. Mr. Lei was shocked by what he saw, but he realized that this guy was able to handle such a strong attack. But the force of the blow was so strong that Xi couldn't stay on his feet afterward and fell to the ground. The sword saw that the master had regained consciousness, and he had been unconscious for a very long time, and Ling Lo had already left. Xi decided to ask the sword if this place was created based on the information in his head. The sword replied that it was correct. And then the master realized that there were things here that he had already forgotten about. The sword knew that memory is a very curious thing, and sometimes it seems that he forgot something, but in fact he just doesn't want to remember it. And important things are like carved in the depths of their souls so easily they are not forgotten. But suddenly Sai decided that before he left, he wished to go to one place. Sword wanted to know where his master was going. Sai went to his door and replied that in this world, his mother had married for the second time. And during the battle, he remembered her. But there is no way he can remember what she looks like. He wants to take a look at her. When he opened that very door, he saw slaps in front of him, and he realized that it was his mother. But in this family, she had a son who was screaming at his mother and asking her to move faster. And the mother was so happy and was asking the son not to run. But suddenly the mother raised her head, and as if she felt that someone was looking at them. Sue leaned against the wall and actually wanted to find the picture. Why did he meet her? And even in the daytime. And he actually found himself in that world. Sword didn't really know and thought that those memories were too strong. That's how he was able to pass into that world. And he didn't think the master loved her so much either. He might cry out of emotion yet. Seo asked him if he manipulated him on purpose, but he was actually grateful to him. And so when he came to the door to the exit, he saw all the guys in front of him and froze with surprise. And so a few days later, all the people were gathering at the tournament venue. Jilan was surprised that so many people came to the tournament. And Yi Yun saw that the tournament hadn't been held for 10 years. Very strong warriors had gathered here. And now the differences between schools are blurring, so tournaments like this are a good opportunity to show what martial arts can do. There are quite a few students from the school here. But Jilan thought that they all passed the qualifiers. The competition is very high. It is not even clear who will win. Luck also plays a big role here. Because of the large number of people, the initial selection is first held in subgroups in a round-robin system. And so that from each group, there would be a few who would have already participated in the decisive battle. Derg Huang spoke up and notified them that it was Sai's turn. But he started coughing before going out, and felt that the training had been so intense, he had slept for days afterward and never regained his strength. His opponent stood in front of him and decided to clarify if he was the freshman hero. Yun already knew that Zi's first opponent was a high school student. Jilan decided to ask him if they knew each other and how strong was he. Yun felt that there might be a problem with him. When he first entered the school, he, like Sai, had become famous. He had been accepted into the ranks of the capital's guards. Now he had around rank 5. And apparently luck is not on Sai's side. Even if he can win, he will spend too much energy. The opponent saw that Sai was calm, and on this he understands among his peers he is distinguished by his strength. He just entered school and immediately became famous and arrogant. But life is unfair. He is older than him and will now put him in his place. The opponent has gained immediate speed to attack the guy, and he thinks the guy is just a stepping stone on his way to victory. But suddenly Z raised his 2 fingers and stopped his sword, and considered the opponent so slow and might not give in since he was older. The opponent was shocked that the freshman stopped his sword with 2 fingers. And it can't be. It's just an illusion. The rival couldn't put his sword away and asked for Sai to let him go. The protagonist didn't budge and simply let go of his hand. The opponent at this point thought that he was just being inattentive and all. He's a junior high school student, so he showed leniency. And taking a couple steps back, he didn't expect his opponent to be so strong. And now no more indulgences, and immediately went on the offensive. And again at the last moment, Sai stopped his blade with 2 fingers. The opponent had already started crying and asking him not to do that, and asking him to pull out his sword and match him in a fight on them. And is he still so insignificant? His opponent was already tired of such humiliation and fell to his knees and let him know that he had given up. Jalan started to ask, Su had always been like this. But Yun thought that this guy would now have a psychological trauma. But Hua told him that last time, Si had tied warriors who were causing trouble to the poles in the center of the city. But one of the disciples was watching the tournament from the window and said that the Lin family had participated in the tournament this time too, and they shouldn't be allowed to win. But Xiao thought that even if the Lin family didn't win but performed well, one should still prevent anyone from paying attention to them. Chen knew that their family was poor and it would be enough, and the fact that they wouldn't win, he would take care of the rest himself. But suddenly a servant came and told the young master that Zi had just defeated his opponent. Chen realized that if he even defeated, Zai is capable, and he didn't think he would lose in the beginning, and there was nothing to come to report such trivialities. She suddenly asked him to stop and decided to find out what kind of sword Zi used. Chung was curious too. Why was he interested in this? He was fighting the best high school student of their school, who is also their backup guard, and he understands that Zi deserves respect since he won, but why does Xiao think he defeated him head-on? Xiao asked again, what sword? The servant tried to explain but didn't know how to explain. Chen couldn't help himself, and grabbing him by his clothes started yelling at him to stop mumbling, and said in a clear voice what kind of sword he was using. The servant replied that the guy stopped the opponent's attack with 2 fingers, and the man admitted his defeat immediately. Chen couldn't resist hitting the servant and called him a lowlife, and believes that this guy apparently no longer belongs among the guards, and he just disgraced him. But Xiao felt that if it wasn't for the reputation of the Gao family, with skills and character like Gao Chen's, he himself would be a scum. He defeated the opponent without using his sword. A curious little fellow indeed, and one should put him in his place. After the victory, Zhijilan asked him to come over to them. The protagonist saw them and was glad they came. Yun told the protagonist that he impressed him, and what level he was now since he had defeated a high schooler with rank 4. I'd explained that there are no certain ranks in martial arts, as they can't use spiritual techniques, which means the opponent can't show their full potential. Jalan was also curious as to how he managed to overpower him, and she believes that the opponent is simply very strong. C shared that the opponent is not weak, but compared to Mr. Ling Lei, he is like a 3-year-old child mindlessly swinging a stick. Yun decided to share that he admires him, and maybe he is the chosen one, and why all the most interesting things happen to him. He even feels like his life is unremarkable. Lin told them that the competition is over for today, and Zi will go home to rest. Yi Xiao is the strongest contestant. He will only show up when it's time for the official competition. And he and Hua will go back to the dojo. And Yun has things to do too. She should go home already. Sid was alone with Jilin and decided to go home with her. On the way, he told her that he didn't think it had been that long, but it felt like it had been a long time since they had walked together like this. Jilin replied that he was always giving him a hard time, although it wasn't her place to tell him that, since she was the one who challenged him to a duel when the school year hadn't even started yet. Sai laughed and saw that he had made her worry, but Jilin asked him that there was no way he would lose. But the protagonist firmly replied her not to worry, he would handle everything. But earlier, Jilin said that she had once heard that he would still be practicing tomorrow. Yi Yun also thought that this competition made him become such a hard worker. The next day, the commander-in-chief of the Gao family's city guards, Yuan, arrived to see Her Majesty. He explained to her that he found her desire to personally attend the tournament unacceptable. The princess wondered why this was so. Wouldn't the tournament lose all meaning if she wasn't there in person? Yen replied that he was taking her safety into consideration. The princess explained to him that his family is responsible for her safety. Does he really want to keep her locked up at court? Or maybe he has other intentions? Wen fell to his knees and replied that no, The tournament has all the security measures in place. The princess changed his mind and allowed him to go, and was left alone in her estates. But she found it very funny that Sai Yi's son was performing from the Lin Liu dojo. She was so curious and wanted to see with her own eyes, and even wondered if he was handsome. But upon receiving the information, Chen was shocked that Her Majesty would personally attend the tournament. Xiao laughed and let it be known that he was out of luck. And with Xi's level, he thinks Ling Liu will stand out among the rest this time. Chen asked him that he should not gloat. And without his family's patronage, Xiao thinks he'll be safe. And if he goes up against Sai in the tournament, he wishes for Xiao to destroy him. Xiao was happy with his life and looked out the window thinking that today is just a beautiful day in a scenic place, and making his heart beat more frequently. In the evening afternoon, one of the tournament participants was taking a stroll, and seeing the shadow of a man asked what he wanted. She simply appeared in the light and directly answered that he wished to kill him. The apprentice decided to find out who sent him, and if he's thinking of preventing him from competing in the official tournament competition, it's not going to happen. And then he would have to defeat him, and after that he would not participate. And he thought that even his abilities would be enough. It's hard to fight against a spear with a sword. And the enemy had chosen a bad place, a narrow alley, and he had no chance to repel the attack. And even disregarding his indiscretion, his center and right attack lines are blocked. The disciple gained the perfect speed to attack and used the divine spear-piercing strike. But every time Xiao's end was only one. He was just destroying every single one of them, and looking at the list he saw that he still had 13 contestants left. And he should hurry up while the moon was shining so brightly. But in the morning, Yun went straight to Su's house to tell him what happened. Sai opened the door and decided to find out what could have happened so early in the morning. Yun asked him to listen to him calmly. There were a total of 16 disciples participating in the tournament, except for himself and Lu Xiao. And the other 14 were all killed last night. On the second day of the competition, they went to the dojo school immediately afterward. Yun saw the main character and immediately approached him. But Sei wanted to know what really happened after all. Lei came out and said that he thought it was Lu Xiao's doing. Apparently, he was interested in him. But Yun decided to ask him why he thought Lu Xiao was behind it. Li replied that he had outstanding abilities, but he was very impatient. He wanted to fight him as soon as possible, so he decided to eliminate all the other contestants. And now it was just the two of them in the final of the tournament. Xi decided to ask, wouldn't the tournament be suspended because of what he had done? Li replied that he would then find a way to fight him one-on-one. He had killed 14 people in one night, and apparently he wanted to practice before facing the devil sword. Jalen wondered what kind of person Lu Xiao was. What kind of sword-wielding techniques does he have? Li replied that Lu Xiao is a maniac. He is obsessed with the art of swordsmanship. After he rebelled against Ling Liu, he traveled to different countries in the mainland and challenged all the masters. And that was how he learned how to fight battles. And now he must have already perfected the art of sword-wielding. And when he faced Lu Xiao, there was no need to treat him as an ordinary swordsman. But Si asked about that devil blade he had just mentioned. But then Gao Yuan came over and replied that the devil blade was the third sword technique inherited from the magical general. And now Xiao Lei realized how much trouble it was causing them. He was shocked that this person also had the surname Gao. Yun told him that it was Lord Gao Yuan. The Gao family now leads and commands the defense of the royal capital. Yuan immediately turned to Si and promised that his son would take care of him within the school walls. But Si replied that Xiao had rebelled against Lin Liu long ago and was now hired by the Gao family. And if he is going to handle the case, it seems to have nothing to do with them. Yen replied that there was no substantiated evidence that Lu Xiao had done it. As the protector of the royal capital, he really should stop the emperor's jousting right now, check on him and Lu Xiao. But the emperor really hopes that the jousting will have a result. Therefore, he will remind them with dignity should wait for tomorrow's competition and no unnecessary business. Li asked the guy to not think so much about Lu Xiao. If he managed to defeat him, he would ask him personally. And if not, he should remember to admit defeat early on. And in this time of peace, talents like him cannot be exposed to the vain dangers they left behind them. Si promised that he would try his best. Yuan slowly leaving let them know that he would send soldiers here to keep security. And Si will stay here today and wait for further orders. The rest of them are going back home. Jalan said goodbye and told the protagonist to be careful. Su replied that it was fine, it should be very safe here. Suddenly on a dark night, Sword felt someone come and notified his master. Sai opened his eyes and was already aware of it. Suddenly, a window suddenly opened and a hooded girl climbed in. Sue immediately asked who was she. The girl fell to the ground and held onto her ass and screamed that she was in pain. The girl asked the guy why he was awake and wanted to scare her to death with his voice. But C was right, because she climbed up to his window in the middle of the night and still accusing him. The girl came very close to him and asked him, "Is he the one Sejin?" But the protagonist answered and asked back, "Who is she?" The girl showed her face and introduced herself, saying her name is Helian Lingling. Sai replied that he didn't know her, and what business did she have with him? And anyway, how did she slip past the monastery guards? Lilin said that those guards were stupid, and with her agility, even the spirits and demons wouldn't have noticed that she had sneaked in. But Sai didn't notice her agility and nimbleness when she was climbing through the window. Linlin began to say that all the participants of the Imperial tournament had been killed, and now she, a single stranger, had come to him. And he expresses such nonchalance in response, it's not even funny. C realized that it was Lu Xiao who did it, not her. Linlin asked him, how does she know that Lu Xiao did it? What if it really wasn't? But C was confident and replied that it didn't matter who, he would capture it. The girl hugged him and thought he was strong and capable, and saw him as a worthy son of Jie Yi. C was surprised that she knew his father. Who is she after all? Linlin replied that she had already fully named herself, and he still didn't know who she was. Su Yi deservedly trained him, originally worthy. Linlin hugged him and looked into his eyes and began to say that just by seeing him, she realized that he was Jie Yi, but at the same time, he was not Jie Yi. But saying those words, it was as if she had used her spell, and asked him lastly, what did he come here for? And then Z wondered, did she mean that he came from another world? But suddenly the guards passed by them and asked them in a loud voice what they were so busy with. And if something happened, would they take responsibility? And immediately ordered his men to search every room. Linlin heard such words and was frightened and realized that she had to get out of here. She tried to climb up to the window while she watched her do it, but she couldn't get up and asked the guy to give her a lift. But Sue decided to see where her agility and dexterity was. Sue lifted her up to the window, but Linlin wasn't happy and asked him not to paw her. But the protagonist asked how to help her then. And lastly, Linlin notified him what she came to him should stay between them, and asked him that he should try his best tomorrow. But C ended up not realizing why she had come, and even wondered what family she was from. The next day, he arrived at the arena, where it was full of people, and everyone was waiting for their battle. Lin asked him to heed her father's words to not overexert himself. Sai agreed and promised that he would try his best. But looking at the other side of the arena, Sai saw Lu Xiao in front of him, and Xiao was very excited that the day had come when he would teach this upstart a lesson. Suddenly, the microphone said for them all to salute Her Majesty. She bowed as well and didn't really see the ruler of this country. What kind of person was this? But raising his head, he saw that it was the same girl from last night. But he even noticed Linlin pointing a finger at him to keep quiet and not tell anyone anything. She decided to find out for himself from his friend. What was the surname of the imperial family in their country? Yun was surprised and asked him if he was serious. And in fact, he was just at a loss for words from him. Their ruler's surname is Helian. There's no need to break etiquette under any circumstances. He actually feels that his lack of basic knowledge will soon play a cruel joke on him. And luckily, he didn't do anything out of line yesterday. Otherwise, it would have been hard to protect his pathetic life. And after this was all over, it would be necessary to learn more about this world from Lin Yun. Yun stepped in front of everyone and asked the participants of the Imperial tournament to step forward. Sai and Xiao entered the arena in front of everyone and looked into each other's eyes. Linlin suddenly remembered that she had once heard it said that the participants of the final battle were both disciples of Master Ling Lei. And apparently Lin Shenlu's strength should be taken seriously. And the Lin family, it's a branch of his house Gao, and Yuan must be too, feeling glory and honor. Wen replied that Ling Shenliu has raised two young geniuses. That's lucky for his country. But Linlin made him realize that no matter the outcome of this battle, there was no way he should do anything about Ling Shenlu, and Yuan should forget his grudges. Suddenly Xiao spoke in the arena and didn't think that he would be able to get Wang Gui's approval. It was really ironic. Ji replied that he didn't understand. Zhao had achieved Chan Ming's recognition, so why did he become like this? But Xiao let him know that he will tell him if he defeats him. Well, if he loses, he will die by his blade, and there is no need for him to know. The sword immediately turned to its master, but Sai made it clear to him that he could not be distracted. Full concentration was needed. They both raised their blades and immediately began to swing them, and each time they blocked each other. Xiao felt the pressure from his opponent and decided to share with him that he was much stronger, and probably also trained in blade skill in Lin Lo's house, and then he should call him brother. He asked his brother to be careful, and as they say, a student can surpass the teacher. Zhu replied that he was looking forward to it then. Immediately, he let out a powerful punch. Xi stepped aside, and dodging it, he gained a perfect trajectory and released his sword at the target. But seeing this, Xiao recognized that he hadn't used Ling Shenliu's hidden energy in battle for a long time. And stopping the guy's attack asked him to add some speed. The two started throwing strong and hidden strikes after each other, and both of them blocked them with ease. Shilan watched the fight and thought it was very powerful, and they are very strong. But Yun thought that unlike the magic duel, they don't use any special techniques. No wall of fire, no typhoon, no hurricane, but the arena is very tense. Lin explained to them that the opponents were exclusively using martial arts. Xiao would use his attack first and Xi would use his defense, and they considered life and death, victory and defeat at the tip of the blade. From such a huge tension, both of them took damage and recoiled to the sides. Sai felt that his opponent was strong, and the strongest he had ever met, as intimidating as spiritual King Gao Shi, and even as strong as Ling Lei's predecessor and father combined. Shi shared with his rival that he wasn't bad. He hadn't had this much fun in a very long time. But Zi answered him in the same way and shared that, in fact, he was scared to death of him. But suddenly Xiao changed his mind and informed him that if he admitted his defeat, he wouldn't kill him. It would be more interesting if he kept him alive. But Xi realized that if he admitted defeat now, he must be hesitant to defeat him later. Xiao supported his version of the answer, and with the tip of his finger, he struck his sword that even the sound of steel rang out. Xiao immediately applied a piercing whistle, the cicada ghost sword. The sword notified its master immediately to be careful. The cicada's blade is as sharp as its wings, and besides cutting iron like raw clay, there are still other special effects. Xi swooped down on him and unleashed a cicada attack, but Zai stayed on his feet reflecting it. But the sword immediately notified him that the attack was not yet complete. But in the end, Sai was shocked that he was injured after the repelled attack, and didn't understand how this happened. But Xiao was already in front of him, and he had to reflect it through the pain. But he fell a little short and got his arm injured again. And then he realized what the matter was. He had correctly pointed out that it was the vacuum effect. And due to the high-frequency vibration, when the sword is swung, a vacuum is instantly released on its trajectory. And that's how the second invisible blade is formed. And it's not a normal sword aura. The cicada vacuum blade is an attack after a normal sword strike. But he realized that if he interrupted the attacks of the cicada blade, he wouldn't be able to stop subsequent attacks. Masters, unlike mages practicing martial arts, focus on using their physical and spiritual strength. If a master is unable to defeat a tough opponent, he must train harder and develop his power. And if he cannot break through the dense defense of the opponent, you need to work on speed. Become faster and faster, because that is the way of the adept of martial arts. And the speed of light is not the limit. Their skill is the endless development and torment of their flesh, and the foundation of the art of swordsmanship is to honor the spirits. The warrior asked the teacher to say it normally, but the teacher replied that if he could not become faster than the enemy, it would not be easier to slow him down. But he asked the warrior to forget about it. After all, such things are hard to explain. He's going to make a sword, and he needs his help, which will involve getting some data. The warrior thought he was up to something again and decided to find out what kind of sword. The teacher replied that he doesn't know what the final result will be, but the name of the blade was predetermined. At the end of midsummer, the voice of cicadas announced it, and now Xiao had trained it and used the cicada ghost sword again. Yan watched the battle and already foresaw that Zi wouldn't be able to dodge it, and Linlin wished that the guy wouldn't die so senselessly. Xi's friends were also so scared for him that they even rose from their seats. But at this moment, Zi remembered about the moon-possessed Lin Xin Liu and lowered his head and dodged. But Xiu saw this and notified him that he had miraculously not broken his back, and now they would see what his next move was. Shou landed another crushing blow, but Zi dodged and used his moon sword in response. and with the tip of the blade, he wounded Xiao's face. The opponent was surprised that this guy had broken through his defense, and he needed to increase his distance. But he wouldn't leave him at a distance and flew to continue dealing damage. He believed that only a full sword twist could repel the cicada's attack, so if he guessed the right moment, he would be able to destroy his weapon. Xiao realized that the old man had transmitted Lin Xin's moon powers to him, and from a distance he launched an attack that even raised the ground. Sai asked himself to forget about everything, and wondered if he himself could put everything on the line and risk his life. The sword cheered him up and told him not to worry, for he would be able to repel his attack. Yishi applied the moon-possessed Ling Xianlou in response, and applying his speed flew through the enemy's attack. But seeing such an appearance in front of him, Xiao was shocked that the guy managed to shorten the distance. The guys were also shocked that it was fast, and didn't understand why Xiao didn't react in any way. And was the punch really that swift? Linlin noticed right away that the new moon was Lin Li's secret technique, and they are observing from the side so they can distinguish the strikes. But in front of Xiao Lu's eyes, it's different, leaning towards the ground, using his body and sword to stop his advance. And the upper half of his torso is motionless, and the smooth and slow movements of his legs will make him feel superior. A martial artist would anticipate their opponent's moves by the slightest movement. Lu Xiao knew that Shi's inaction was deceptive. And after such a move, having accumulated all his strength, he rushed forward swiftly. His steps were light, imperceptible, and his movements were smooth and clearly calibrated. But he did not realize what had happened. It was like a month of disappearance, invisibly watching them from the sky. This was the essence of the illusion of deceiving the eyes. Yi Shijin had indeed become an unrivaled swordmaster after mastering Master Linglu's technique. She saw nothing in front of him but Xiao's body, which he pierced through with his sword. His friends began to rejoice at how Sai had defeated Lu Xiao. But spilling the liquid, Xiao thought that Mi Xi is good. Only a person who had gone through tons of battles and training could master a technique of such strength, and apparently he is not experienced enough yet. But he asked him to keep still. After all, a few centimeters separated the blade from his heart. Sheng smiled and wanted to stand in that position for a while. But when he came to his senses, his soul would already be completely consumed by the demon. Lilin saw his hand movements and shouted that it was devilish power, and asked for it to move away from him. When immediately ordered that they put the Royal Defense Squad on alert, and immediately need to stop Xiao, she saw the demon in him and froze in a moment. But Xiao with demonic eyes told him to shout, and his sword started to tremble with power, and further he used the crying demon. Sai stepped aside and didn't know what it was. The sword replied that apparently the cicada sword was infected, and it was clearly made by the third demon that Lin Li had killed. That is, the weeping demon. All the guards pounced on him to stop him, but Xiao didn't even touch them as he chopped off everyone's heads. Yun immediately ordered everyone to get out of here, and the warriors of level 4 and above should make sure they get out safely. And he also let the others know not to attack him. They weren't his opponents. Jilan was against it after all. Si was still there. Yun answered her that right now their duty is to protect the common people. They only have to rely on himself. Lin was shocked and didn't know how this could have happened. Linlin remembered that during the battle between Lin Lu and the third demon, while dying, the third demon had placed a special curse on the cicada sword to infect Lin Lei himself. This was the reason why Lin Lu could no longer hold the sword in his hands. Yen thought and said that he thought it would be better for her to take shelter in a safe place. They will deal with Lu Xiao on their own. Linlin put on the crown and advised that the responsibility for today's situation rested on their shoulders. For the sake of personal revenge, they had concealed and negligently dealt with such a huge danger, and they would talk to them about it. Yen started shouting at him and calling him a jerk, and realized that it was all because of his antics. And he couldn't even think that he would submit to evil so easily. How dare he still resist his detention? Sao looked at him and considered him a lowly person, and threatened him that he would pay for his unfair treatment of the old man. One decided to destroy Xiao and sent his attack at him, ordering him to die. Seeing this kind of magic, Si felt that he was a level 9, and his strength was several times that of a level 7 warrior. But Xiao also started to act, and after lifting all the warriors' bodies, he sucked out their souls and inserted them into his body, becoming much stronger. But even after that, he gave them life and immediately ordered them to kill everyone in their path. The bodies of the warriors were left without their appearance, but with demonic power they moved and could kill everyone in front of them. All the bone creatures pounced on the warriors and started killing each one after another. Yen saw that things were bad and jumped out to fight everyone. But there was one boy left in the arena asking his father for help. The creature just stood over him and was ready to finish him off. Yuen heard this and immediately stood in front of the boy and destroyed the creature. He immediately asked his son to get out of here. Xiao thought that the old man had only come down here for the sake of his pathetic son. By virtue of his position, shouldn't he have been the first to try to kill the enemy? A pathetic family, and he thinks that they have some special blood flowing in their veins. They're no better than anyone else. But then C stood in front of him and asked him not to attack his friends. Shou turned around and was surprised that this guy was still here, and saw him as a very moral guy, also trying to protect his friends. And no need to worry, he won't kill them. They've clearly gotten to a safe place by now. CO asked him why he's doing this, and he can't understand him. After all, what kind of person is he? A good person or a soulless demon? Jeb replied that being a good person is his longtime dream, but being a soulless demon is his destiny. And in his heart, there is nothing else but thoughts of killing. Either the curse of that sword is making itself felt, or the white warriors have affected him so much that he can't make sense of it today. C found out and shared that Xiao knew the sword was cursed, but he stole it anyway. He did it to save Lin Lan and his descendants. Shia replied that this old man was too good a person. This curse and this sword were more suitable for him. And since he had murderous thoughts before, why not give himself free will with this sword? Sai asked him, does he think he's doing the right thing? Saving Ling Lei but killing so many people? Xiao decided to ask the guy what he thought. Is it the right thing to do? And while he hasn't turned into a demon yet, let him be the last person he kills then. Yi got ready and threatened him to stop him, and Xiao decided to see what he could do. Xiao demonstrated his might, and after destroying everything around him, swooped down on the guy with tremendous speed. Zhou applied the final form of the Devil Moon Ice Stream, but Zi remembered that while fighting Ling Lei, at the very moment he had used his final form of Devil Moon Ice Stream. Moments before his imminent death, he had finally found the meaning of his life. What he didn't realize right away was that this way he couldn't repel its blow. And he must survive. Using all his skills that he has acquired during his training, he must find the only way to strike that will allow him to hit him. And one precise strike is much better than 10, or even 100 strikes. And at the last moment, Sai found the perfect strike. And looking under his armor, he found Xiao's weak spot. Xiao simply dodged and made a sharp step forward and swept his sword under Xiao's chest. Xiao felt a sharp pain in his chest and didn't realize how this was possible. And he understands that there are no invincible swords in the world. But how could he find the weak point of his sword so quickly? And it turned out that the guy is smart beyond his years, and it seems the student really surpassed his teacher. Su turned back and was glad that this demon would not get up again. And his minions had clearly lost most of their power. Yuan walked up to him and couldn't think he could handle him. But Zi was shocked that the general approached him and senses his anger. And hopefully he wouldn't kill him under all the hype. Only his men were left nearby. Yuan lets the guy know that he can be proud of himself today, and he realizes that some of his family members are not the best people on this planet. And the incident that happened today will hit Gao's family very hard, and he can consider that he thus repaid them. But suddenly the demon's body started to change, and they were shocked that it turned out not to be Xiao. Yen looked and realized that it was one of his warriors, and apparently Xiao had been using this technique from the beginning to escape from here. And already Zi has nothing to do here, he can safely go. She bowed and thanked the general for the permission. Heading towards the exit, suddenly he saw a guy, Chen, who was staring at him intently. Chen turned to Sai and threatened him not to think he had won, and they weren't done yet. But Sai couldn't resist asking him if he really didn't realize how serious this was, and his father really was too soft on him since he can't see anything. Gao's family's in huge trouble, and he had better go and support his father now. Chen was frightened and didn't understand how the guy dared to talk to him like that, and immediately ordered his warriors to give this jerk a good lesson. But opening his eyes saw that the warriors do nothing and stand only in front of him. That same evening, Mr. Li was smoking on the balcony and enjoying the season. But suddenly he asked the guy not to hide there, for he had noticed him a long time ago. She showed himself and replied that he didn't know how to come here and felt somehow awkward. Li straightforwardly said that the guy lost and shouldn't allow himself to follow him. he should find his own way. Xia replied that he was going to find his own way, but he realized that he would never surpass the teacher. And here he had only trained this boy for a few days, and he was already strong enough to beat him. And that's unbelievable. But Le still didn't understand why his student had contracted this sword. Xia replied that it was his choice, and no matter what, he would not deviate from his path. Even if the whole world starts a war against him, for the sake of his goal, he is willing to do anything. And now he goes to the north to seek the patronage of evil spirits and thinks that next time they will meet as enemies. Li still thought him a foolish child. After all, he had once again made a choice not in his favor. After that fierce battle, Lin Li and his family's problems finally came to an end. And after the competition ended, a special state of affairs was declared in the city. The royal guards scoured the entire city, hoping to get on Xiao's trail, but they couldn't find anything. And it's feared that Xiao has long since fled the city. Since he was declared the winner in the end, the Empress ordered Lu to be honored with the rank of Grand Master of Swordsmanship. And not that he boasted, but after his performance in the competition, a lot of people started coming to Lin Leo to ask him to be their teacher. Apparently, he had really impressed them, and martial techniques have become popular again, and hopefully Lin Bo is very happy about it. As for the Tao family, after such events, they will definitely no longer provide protection for the imperial family, especially accepting the fact that Xiao has been acting on their behalf all this time. Gao Jing is also having a hard time, although he was lucky that because of his father's connections, he was not imprisoned, but released under house arrest. He is currently under investigation, and one might even consider this a typical ending to the story of a negative character in some book. However, that's fair enough. And he's had a lot of things happen to him lately, but he's unfortunately just confined to his bed. And after the competition, when he's already mentally recovered, his body started showing all the signs of his battle with Xiao. Every joint and muscle in his body hurts terribly, and he just can't move. And he thinks that he hasn't been to school for a long time. He'll just be unable to pass most of the exams. And he hopes in this world there's no such thing as repeating a year. Suddenly, a window suddenly opened, and Sai immediately turned his head. Just then, Linlin climbed up and said hello to him. Sue was surprised that it was her again, and they were on the third floor. Linlin decided to show herself in all her glory and said that Slick is in. Sue inquired from her, why did she come here again? Doesn't the Empress have no other things to do at all? Linlin jumped on him and yelled that he was rude, and asked him to watch his language. And now he knows who she is, so he needs to watch his behavior. Seo realized that and apologized to Her Majesty. And even so, she sat so close that he can see her underwear. C decided to ask her why she came here. Linlin replied that when no one was around, he could call her by her name. And she came here to congratulate him on his victory. She had originally wanted him to come to her palace, but then she was told that he couldn't even move. So here she was. Sue realized that she had sneaked in here again, and probably not finding her in the palace. Their guards would raise the alarm again, but even with all this danger, they still entered the position of her subordinate and sneaked in here. Linlin became upset and asked him if he spoke to everyone like this. If that was the case, he would never be able to gain any girl's favor. Sue didn't even know it was that bad, and maybe then she'll give him some title to make it easier for him to get girls. Linlin started to pound him and asked him, did he really think it was that easy? At that moment, just as Sai was saying that he was in pain, and Linlin saw that he thought he would go to all kinds of social parties and all the girls would line up to meet him. And even if she bestowed some title, no girl would look at him and he would still be a redneck. Sue didn't understand why she was being so cruel, or whether he had no chance at all. Linlin started laughing and asked him that he shouldn't be afraid if no one really wanted him, and she would gladly take him to her palace. And how's that for an offer like that to him? In fact, Sai didn't want to get into the palace that way at all. Lin came to him unexpectedly, and when she heard that he was awake, she decided to come in. Linlin heard a strange voice and didn't know who it was, so she asked Sai to find her a place to hide. Sai asked, where would he find such a place? Let him go back the way she came here. Linlin started yelling that they were on the third floor. It's too high up here, or else he wants her dead. Lin walked in and greeted the guy, but Sai only recognized her by her voice. Lin replied that she was very apologetic. She had been very busy lately. It was only now that she could find time to check on him. Sai said that he once heard that there were a lot of people coming to their dojo now. She must be very busy. The girl replied that she was, but now things are kind of getting back to their normal routine, and her father had already started training his new followers. And suddenly she almost forgot Hua had given him some medicine. She says it will help reduce his body pain, and she'll see about taking it. Sai asked her for starters, "What is it?" Lin blushed a little in the moment and notified him to take off his clothes. Lilin was shocked at what she heard, and sitting under the couch realized that she came here first. And raising her head on the other side, she called him a pervert and asked him where he was looking. Sue was scared that she had noticed it. But actually he was shocked and decided to ask her why he should take off his clothes. But standing up abruptly, his shoulders slumped. Lin replied that she should smear the medicine on his body. Sue didn't want to do that and asked maybe she shouldn't do that. Lin blushed but replied that she should do it. It was her duty to him. Sue agreed and took off his clothes, showing all his scars. Lin stood behind him and notified that she was about to start. Touching felt that he had a very pumped body, and he could only bring it to such a flawless state through long and hard training. While setting up the medicine, she asked the guy if she was pushing too hard. Sue replied that it was just right. He can feel his muscles getting lighter, and he can feel the warmth from the medicine. Hua's medicine, and should quickly put him back on his feet. Linlin thought this was all very strange. And why is she hiding here in the first place? Sai suddenly stopped her and informed her that he was already feeling much better. But Lin replied that there were still some feet left. Sue reached for the ointment and said that he could already put the ointment on his legs himself. But Lin resisted and said he wouldn't be able to smear it properly. But unable to hold back, she fell right on top of the guy, the moment he was naked. Sue asked the girl how she was. Lin apologized and decided to ask if it hurt too much. The guy replied that there was nothing wrong with it, but Lin asked him not to refuse her help. It's the only thing she can do for him now. And he can't refuse a girl, can he? Sue thought that they were in some weird position, and he needs to calm down, and he needs to think about something completely boring. If the radius of a circle has a radius of 25, then its area is S. Suddenly, Lin asked him what he thought of her. Sai was shocked and didn't understand what she meant by asking that. He thinks she is a very smart and nice girl. Besides mastering the martial art very quickly at a very high level, she also helps her father around the dojo, and he thinks her father is very proud of her. Lin replied that she does all this because she has to do it. To protect their dojo, she has diligently studied martial arts techniques, but she has no talent. And if the guy hadn't saved them this time, she thinks their dojo wouldn't even exist anymore. And doesn't he think she's useless? Sue asked her to stop talking about herself like that. If she perseveres, she will definitely achieve great things. But if she's now because she's failing at something, she's definitely not going to get stronger. Besides, she's already strong enough. Wasn't she the one who had straightened out that jerk Gao Chen back then? Lin decided to clarify. She should have more faith in herself. Z replied that it's not that she needs to believe in herself more. She needs to be proud of herself. They are still young, and that is their main weapon right now. If he faced an opponent that she couldn't defeat, she should only train harder and harder until she could defeat him. Lin was embarrassed to see him talking like an adult. Z replied that he was only telling her the truth. She leaned her head against him and began to thank him for such words and guidance. Sue hugged her and replied that it was nothing. But in a moment, things turned out so much that Lin tried to kiss him. But by this point, Jalan burst in on them. Lin immediately went under the couch so she wouldn't see them. Sue was scared too and asked her what she was doing here. Jilin was shocked and asked why he was without clothes. He also didn't close his door. But anyway, she apologized to him for showing up so unexpectedly, and she brought him the notes of today's lessons. Sitting down next to him, she decided to ask him how his body was, and if he was feeling better. But Lin was under the couch and met Linlin, who said hello to her. Lin was shocked to find out it was Her Majesty. But Linlin covered her mouth and asked her without pleasantries. But Sue thought he was a corpse at this moment, and was shocked to hear about the marathon on the son of an honorable spirit. And there's no way that could happen. The protagonist realized that his name was Sai Jin, and he was the son of spirit gods. But he wasn't exactly from here. He was hit by a truck back in that past life. However, his soul didn't die and went into the child's body, and indeed from a completely different place. However, he's following a path laid out by someone long ago, and he is destined to become a warrior that this world has yet to see. By all means, However, now is exactly the moment when he is utterly confused and doesn't even know how to get away with it. But he doesn't even know what he's supposed to do. So it occurs to him to pretend everything's fine and invite them over to play mahjong. And there's four of them. But then he realized there's no such game in this world yet. But how to tell everyone the rules, he doesn't know. And he's even sure that it will become very popular here. He'll open some place with drinks, girls, and mahjong, and have a world competition, and then she'll teach the demons how to play it. And everyone will find out by competing with each other. Jilan asked him if he's okay, and he looks kind of weird. He must have a fever. She couldn't help himself and started yelling that there won't be any wars and deaths then. Jilan was so badly frightened that she dropped all the notes from her hands and asked him what was he so scared about. C saw them fall to the floor and thought she was going to see them, and he'll be finished. Jilan reached down and saw the strange hand, and all the girls came out from under the bed and showed themselves. Jilan decided to ask him what was going on. Lin replied that she was helping Ji apply the ointment that Hua had given her on her body. Jilan thought it was strange and asked how to apply it on the body, and that Z couldn't do it herself. Linlin, seeing her tone, immediately realized that she was a princess. Su felt embarrassed and saw Linlin gloating, and this all happened because of her. Linlin asked, "What do you mean because of her?" Jilan looked at the girl and didn't know who she was. C replied that it was Her Majesty the Empress. Jilin was shocked to hear that it was Her Majesty. Linlin replied to her that they weren't at an official reception. They could do without the pleasantries. Besides, she's a princess from a neighboring kingdom. But Jilin wondered what the Empress was doing in his room. Z pretended not to know. Suddenly, Linlin entered the conversation and said that Z was special and she had an errand for him. So she hoped that everything that happened here would stay between them. Jilan didn't understand. In what sense special? The princess replied that he could explain everything to her himself. And even turning to Lin Bo, said that aside from that, she planned to meet with her father. Would she see her off? After that, Lin asked Jilan to help Xi and handed her some ointment for her wounds. Left alone, Z decided to explain the Empress's words. But Jilan decided to apply the ointment first. She began to massage him and said that he was in good shape since he was flirting with girls. She decided to ask her if she was jealous. Jilan replied that he was so relaxed. Instead of flirting with the girls in their class, let him start taking time to study. And he was going to become a spiritual deity after all. At this rate, she would get that rank faster. Seo replied that he wouldn't mind it if she got that rank, and his parents are spiritual masters. Meanwhile, the princess arrived at the Deiji school and saw that it was full of new students. Linlin took a closer look and praised the teacher for having many new students. Li replied that it was all thanks to her, Her Majesty. Linlin revealed that the Gao family had gone over the top lately, and it was time to cool their ardor a bit. But Li let her know that he's just a swordsman. He doesn't know about such matters. And Linlin saw that Li never changes, and all he has to do is train her warriors. Li asked her, did she really come here to see someone else's life? Linlin bluntly told him that Xiao had gone to the north and wanted to make sure of it. Lei couldn't answer her anything and slowly closed his eyes. But the princess asked him, is he going to cover it further? Li answered her straightforwardly that good disciple or bad disciple, he was still his disciple. But Linlin let him know that Z and Ruin Day had traveled to find a way to cure him. But Li replied that if he was honestly reasoning, he wasn't that worried about the wound anymore. But the princess, on the contrary, showed that it was important to her. And disaster was coming, she could feel it, and she would need his help in her hour of need. Li asked with surprise, demons? The girl answered that not only. There are creatures in the world much more dangerous than demons. At this point, Chen was so angry and displeased that he asked his servant to get out of his sight. The servant replied that the Gao family was now being watched by all their citizens, and he should act so inconsiderately, and thought the Lord should show some calmness. Chen said they kicked him out of school. This is a disgrace to his honor and dignity. How can he be calm in such a situation? But suddenly there was a voice that said that such a worthless school was not worthy to train such an outstanding person like him, and it has been entrusted with his education. And he need not worry, she would make him the strongest student in the whole school. Chen asked who she was. The girl replied that her name was Biluo. However, she is most often called Pearl. Chen took a closer look at her and saw that she had rank 9, and was very happy about it. The next morning, Z went out for a walk and felt an order of magnitude better, and grateful for Hua Yi's medicine. But suddenly, Jilan came out behind her and asked, This had nothing to do with her little favor, right? She turned around and said hello to her. Yoon also walked over and saw that he looked too calm for someone who had skipped so many classes. And did he really think that since he was so strong, the teachers would stop stressing him out? Sue answered him bluntly that every school has a special student who is allowed to do everything. But the teacher came out behind them and laughed and saw that he was already perfectly fine, and today is just about practicing fighting. He was originally supposed to lead it. And Sai knows how it goes, fighting with all the students. However, something made him very tired, so he's filling in for him. Sue was shocked and didn't know how he would do it, and the guys also told him that they would see him already in class. But Sue didn't understand why they were so excited. When they arrived at the lesson, the teacher asked everyone to make sure they greeted Sai, and he had recently returned from the infirmary. However, he had already recovered enough to replace him. And anyone wishing to practice fighting can challenge Sai to a fight. In the meantime, he'll go get some rest. Sue strongly resented and tried to stop Teacher Gon and threatened that he would tell everything to the headmaster. Gan turned around and almost forgot and let the boys know that everyone could use any weapon, even a stick, and everyone except C. The students immediately lined up in formation and shouted that they were challenging Sue to a fight. Sue thought that they wouldn't do such a thing. After all, there's no need to attack him all in one go. Jilin asked his friend if he would participate. Yun replied that no, he still has some dignity left. He's going to fight C one-on-one. Lin also said that everyone liked the teacher's idea. Hua confirmed it and saw that they were getting such a rare chance to fight such a strong warrior like C. And Yun had never once seen Sai fight at full strength using spiritual techniques before. And it's going to be very interesting to watch. Sue stood up against his opponent and bowed to accept their challenge. All the disciples immediately used their abilities and prepared to attack him. Yun could see that the boys were simultaneously thinking of both defense and attack, and somehow, they were being very cautious. Hana shared that she thought they were just taking this fight very seriously, and Jalan thought that after all, they already know how strong C is. They could use a little extra caution, but Lin could see that even so, they wouldn't be able to defeat him. Sai is very well versed in the intricacies of such battles. These guys can only memorize theory from textbooks. CO flew at the first opponent, and the student used a third-level technique, a fireball. But Sai grabbed his hand at the last moment. The student was shocked that he had shortened the distance so quickly. Sue immediately twisted his arm and directed the disciple's attack at the others. The disciple couldn't do anything about it and apologized to the others. But Sue immediately notified him that he had lost, and by tripping him, he knocked him to the ground. But behind that, a girl ran at him and shouted that he wouldn't have time to block her punch, and used a third-level technique. Electric shock. Sai responded with a level 1 technique of water flow. As a result, the water collided with the charge and formed a cage. He told her that he wouldn't come out again. The girl was puzzled and didn't know what he had done, and the water touched her body as it immediately electrocuted her. She immediately applied the first-level ice disc technique. Behind his back, other disciples had already rushed towards him and applied the third-level technique. But C had prepared 2 discs beforehand and aimed them at the disciples who were attacking from behind. The discs were so bright that they blinded the eyes of the disciples. After opening their eyes, they couldn't find it. But the girl shouted to them that the opponent was behind them. They put their hands on their backs and signaled that they had lost. Jalan saw something and said that Sai wasn't going to fight at full strength at all. But Hua thought he was acting tactically. Yun laughed hard and thought that wasn't what the teacher wanted him to do at all. She saw the strange expression on their faces and asked if they were okay. Suddenly, all of the students suddenly bowed and thanked him, and realized that he was many times stronger and smarter than them. Sai didn't understand why they were saying that, and asked them not to be nice. The girl told him that she thought their fight was somehow very strange. The others started to get indignant and yell too. Sue wondered if it was because he didn't use high-level techniques at all. Yun walked over and explained to him that as he realized from what he had seen, he spent a lot of time practicing his techniques. And at what approximate age did he first go hunting? Sai thought for a moment and replied that he was about 8 years old. When his disciples heard that, they thought his parents were crazy. And how could they live next door to a forest with all kinds of monsters? And it must have been so hard for him. Yishi here already thought they were feeling sorry for him. Jalan shared that she thought this is the difference. Because of the customs of her country, she too has started to refine and practice her techniques since early childhood. As a result, she and he have slightly different visions about the use of spiritual techniques. Sai decided to ask her if most students, in order to obtain higher levels and more powerful techniques, simply study the theory and do not go into the techniques themselves. In addition, they neglect the low-level techniques even though they were not useless at all. The girl confirmed that this was the case. She didn't think that the first-level technique of water flow could stop her third-level technique of electric discharge. And she thought that water flow was a childish technique, created just to simply feel her spiritual power. Yi replied that current needed a good conductor, and as everyone knows, air is not suitable for it at all. So when he used his technique, the water flowed. But when he saw her face, he realized that she didn't understand and stopped. He explained that he thought it would be too difficult for them, and he'd better tell them the basic principles of combat first. And as everyone knows, the higher the level of technique they use, the more damage they can inflict on their opponent. But at the same time, to use high-level techniques, they would need a large amount of time to prepare, and they would spend a much greater amount of their strength. And since spiritual techniques are a process of blending their spiritual power and natural power, which is divided into elements and floating in the air, the third-level fireball technique will require much more natural firepower than the first-level flame technique. And since the natural power is evenly distributed throughout this world, in order to concentrate the amount of natural power they need for the third-level technique, they would need a much greater amount of time and strength than for a level 1 technique. This process is also affected by their level of strength. And the greater their level and the greater their spiritual power, the faster they will be able to concentrate more natural power. Therefore, people with high levels could use low-level techniques lightning fast. And now the guy realized that this was why he was able to use his techniques so quickly. Su replied that the disciple was right. Although his level wasn't much higher than theirs, but it took him much less time to create first-level techniques than them to create third-level techniques. And to understand why he did that, it was time to break down this situation. If he were to use a level 4 or 5 technique, he could certainly deal with 2 or even 3 of them. But from the attack of the remaining 2, he probably wouldn't have time to defend himself. That was why he didn't use a high-level technique. And if there was a demonic monster in the place of the remaining 2, it would most likely chew its throat. And besides the fact that low-level techniques could be created very quickly, they also had other trump cards. You shouldn't neglect them at all. And the most important thing is not the strength of his technique, but using it at the right time. This is the basic principle of combat. And every technique has its uses. Before becoming great warriors and using more complex techniques, he advises them to learn the basics. And wind can make the flames grow much stronger. But if you create a vacuum, the flame will immediately die out. The elements react differently with each other. Such knowledge would be very useful to them in the future. After that, a teacher came up to him and praised Sai, and made sure that he definitely needed to become a teacher. He will talk to the principal about it. Sai turned around and replied to the teacher that he was mocking him. But the teacher said that everyone has already dispersed, and thinks now is the time. Sayu didn't understand what teacher was talking about. Suddenly, Yoon came up to him and asked if they could fight each other. Su looked at him strangely and asked if he was serious. Yoon didn't hide it and replied that he was, and he doesn't want to miss this opportunity. Yoon said before they start, he wants to warn him, unlike other students, he has been honing his skills since early childhood, and so he doesn't expect him to defeat him easily. So he asked the teacher, can he even use his sword in this fight? Gao yawned and replied that no. He had seen his sword skills before. This time, he would like to see something new from him. Yun showed strength and realized that he already knew that his strength was the ice element. Jalan was a bit surprised by his element and even wondered what kind of strengths he had. Yun didn't wait long and immediately started attacking with his ice-sharp blades. Siu realized that the cone shape of his ice not only increased the potential damage of the technique, but also increased its speed due to the fact that ice overcomes air resistance more easily. But unfortunately, it would only take a slight impact on his ice, and it would immediately change its trajectory. Yun became curious, and instead of using the fire element to repel his attack, he used the same ice element. And on top of that, he could easily find the weakness of his technique. He's really good. And when fighting him, you have to use your head well. And then Sai started to think about what his opponent was going to do. He can't defend all the time, and you have to get closer to him. Su immediately shortened his distance. Yun suddenly said that he borrowed something from him. Su became curious and asked what. Suddenly, Yun with a stealthy attack attacked him from below, throwing ice from his finger. But Su dodged such a thing and stepped aside. Yoon said that it was just like he said, it was fast, easy, and effective. And they could call the technique something. Su replied that he usually called it ice bullets. Yoon agreed and thought it was not a bad name, and immediately applied the first level technique, ice bullets. The opponent immediately constructed some bullets and shot straight at the guy. Sai realized that the opponent had taken his gun and bullets as the basis for his new technique, and how he was able to create it so quickly. But no matter how it was, one thing was clear. Only Yoon was much stronger than all the other students. Suddenly, he felt like he couldn't move. And after realizing the element he had a talent for, he studied all of its nuances and characteristics very well, and decided that he should try attacking from behind. So he unleashed a stealthy attack from the back. Jalan was shocked to see that this was her fighting style. But Yoon used an ice shard and replied that when the guy wasn't here yet, he and Jalan fought every day. So he had already thoroughly learned her fighting style. Her chips would definitely not help him. Lin watched and saw that Yun was very strong. Teacher suddenly started saying that C was good with both his sword and spiritual techniques. Using these trump cards in a timely manner would bring him easy victories most of the time. But now that he had lost one of them, his strength had noticeably decreased. And if only spiritual techniques are taken into consideration, C and Lin Yun are at roughly the same level of strength. And it even became interesting that in a seemingly ordinary fight, Yoon decided to use his brand new technique. It was easy to use and quite useful. He would definitely put this first level technique in his ice element textbooks for next year. And the fight with Lin Yun is not like the fight with Shilin at all. It's much more unpredictable. One of the advantages of the ice element is the control over the entire battlefield. C suddenly looked under his feet and felt that he couldn't move. The ice was just sucking on his leg. But seeing the attack in front of him, he wouldn't have time to use a defensive technique. And his technique became much faster. And it seems to be because the more he uses his ice techniques, the lower the air temperature around him becomes, and in low temperatures, the ice becomes both stronger and faster. Sai applied the air attack and realized that the low temperature also increases the density of the atmosphere, making the wind elemental techniques stronger as well. The protagonist applied the force so much that he sent an air attack back. Yoon immediately applied a level 3 technique of wall of ice and repelled his air attack. Yoon wondered if he was preparing for the attack. Su got tired of enduring all of this and used elemental blending. Releasing several attacks at the same time, he tried to destroy the ice shield. Shalan was surprised that it was a second-level technique, and judging from its strength, it seemed more in line with a third-level technique. But teacher had told her that he was using the changes in the atmosphere to strengthen his techniques. But what he would do next even became curious. Yoon sensed that C was preparing for a decisive strike, and now he would see what he could do with this technique. And it was time to show his real strength already. Yoon applied a defense seal, forming a huge circle in front of him. Lin immediately saw that the strength of this technique was level 5, but Sai decided that he would use the fire technique first. So he used the second-level technique of fire flow, unleashing his full power on him. Lin realized that the guy had used a mixture of fire and wind techniques, and would it be able to destroy the ice element technique? But Jalan replied that no matter how it was, because of the ice path, fire had noticeably lost in its power. Leaving only air energy in front of him, he immediately used the second-level technique of electrocution. The ice immediately began to crack and shatter after such a thing. Jalan was surprised that he had broken Lin Yun's defense technique, but teacher replied that he would no longer be able to do so in time. Yun finished preparing his basic technique. Yun raised his hand above his head and said that victory would be his, and released a huge hammer. The disciples saw this and immediately realized that this was a level 5 technique. Also, one of the strongest techniques of this level. And they didn't even know that Yun could already use such techniques. He was only recently at level 4. And how was he able to reach level 5 so quickly? Yun started to smile and asked his opponent if he was going to give up. Su replied that he hadn't even thought about it. He was much faster than him, and he had already finished preparing his attack. Who should surrender here? It was only him. Shalan got worried and told her teacher that they were going to kill each other. Gan replied to tell her not to worry. He was in control of the situation. She began to form and used a 4th-level technique, a stream of fireballs. The fire was so fast and flaming that the ice didn't even help with it, and everything was covered in steam. Shalon was in the smoke and shouted the names of her friends and said that they were already over the edge. Gan grabbed them and said that the two of them were some of his strongest students. If anything happened to them, he would definitely be kicked out of here. Or so they thought. Make trouble for him. Yun got embarrassed and started laughing, but told his opponent that his attack was faster. That's why Teacher Gan saved him first. And in that case, he thought that in this fight, it could be considered that Z had won. He reciprocated and replied that he thought Yun was very strong. The girls immediately ran up to them and asked if they were all right. Gan was greatly pleased with them and thought that they were just outstanding students, and thought this year he would definitely become Teacher of the Year. In this world, there was a back slope of years by the Royal Training Academy, and the Royal Training Academy is located by the mountain range called Demon Years, and the House of Shai is located on the other side of the mountain range. Because of the large amount of spiritual power concentrated in the atmosphere of the mountain range, there are many demonic creatures there, hence the name Demon Mountain. Some legends say that in the heart of this mountain range, where has not yet set foot, there are demons of the 9th and even 10th level. And although the academy is located near the mountains, but the amount of spiritual power in this vicinity is much less than that on top of the ridge. And so the demonic beings near the school are mostly low level. And under the responsibility of the academy, there was only one level 5 demonic creature residing in the mountains near the school. He was needed to control the other low-level creatures. And this area was used once a year as a venue for the entrance exams. And no one had ever disturbed the order that had formed here. But everything comes to an end sometime. By killing the only level 5 demonic creature, Sai had caused all the other creatures that lived here to fall into chaos. But the former king of these mountains, a level 5 demonic creature, had been in this area for over 300 years. Most of their teachers hadn't spent that long in school, and this creature had served their academy faithfully, never causing them any problems. After its death, most of the teachers began to express their concern about the situation. In order to avoid the emergence of a harmful atmosphere in the team, the academy decided to organize a big picnic for the teachers. And of course, not without the help of their students. Drinking alcohol, the teachers completely forgot about the reasons for their anxiety, and only the headmaster still realizes the danger of the current situation. If these mountains do not have their king, the other creatures, afraid of their students, will simply leave the area. And if they left, there was no way they would be able to hold their annual entrance exam. The headmaster thought, what should he do, and how should he proceed? After all, the centuries-old tradition of holding the entrance exam can't break as long as he is the principal of the academy, and he can't even send someone to fetch a new high-level creature. Because if the demonic creature itself doesn't choose a new habitat, then after being forcibly brought here, it will simply run back. Suddenly, a student burst in and shouted that a new level 5 demonic creature had settled near the academy. The principal was very surprised after that and asked him to show it to him. When he arrived at the forest, the principal was shocked by what he saw and didn't even know what to say. Meanwhile, the teacher was telling the class that there were demonic beings in nature who, through the light of evolution, had acquired the ability to utilize the spiritual power in the atmosphere. And such monsters are much more dangerous than normal monsters. Demons and humans have already studied most varieties of demonic creatures very well, but some areas of the Demon Mountains had never been stepped into by human foot. So it was foolish to assume that they would never discover any new types of demonic creatures again. Jalan suddenly asked the guy, why isn't he listening to the teacher? And what is he drawing there? Shai replied that he was getting too bored, so he decided to do a bit of his little invention. Jalan looked and asked, is that what he calls an invention? Say replied that it seemed like he wouldn't need it anyway. He drew it just for fun out of boredom. But if he really creates this thing, he can sell it for a huge amount of money to some country. And then he would become the richest man on this planet. Jalan listened to him and didn't know what he was talking about. Suddenly, she went up to him and asked him if he was free after class. C replied that of course he was, and thought that Jalan wanted to ask him out on a date, and he finally waited for it. The teacher heard them shouting and said that whispering is forbidden in class, and asked them to observe silence. After class, he explained to her that he didn't know if he could help her, but he would try very hard, and thought she definitely wants to confess her love to him. Hurry up and let her say those 3 words. She would definitely get a positive response from him. Jalan suddenly made up her mind and asked him to help her become stronger. Sieg felt very sad after saying those words and hoped that this was not all. Jalan said that he himself knows that her strength is the wind element, and she is very weak in dealing damage to her opponent. And since it's her innate ability, she spent all her time studying this element, and Z could see that she was only thinking about battles. Jalan asked him why he looked so upset. Z replied that because there aren't many tactics for fighting with the wind element, and she doesn't know how to develop her power, right? Jalan let him know that he is right. She knows that she should follow from the textbooks and raise her spiritual power, and that way she can learn how to use high-level techniques. But after from the fight with Yun, she realized that she wasn't quite using even the techniques she already knows now correctly. And she had been thinking about it for a few days trying to solve the problem herself, but she had failed. So she had to ask him for help. And wasn't she being a little too brash towards him? Sue replied that she wasn't. After all, they had agreed to obtain the rank of spiritual deity together, so they should help each other. And the wind elemental techniques actually have a small damage, but she had already solved that problem herself by creating her own arrow of the gods technique. And hence, in that direction, he thinks she doesn't have any problems. And on the other hand, an even bigger flaw of the wind elemental techniques. And that is that if the opponent got within a certain distance of her, they become completely useless. Therefore, mobility is something she should pay attention to. And in his opinion, since she had started to develop range techniques, she should not pay attention to close combat, but focus even more on improving the techniques she had. He realized that knowing Yalan's diligence, if she started paying attention to close combat, she would soon turn into some kind of jock. And he didn't really want to see her like that. Jillian suddenly asked him, what was he thinking? And so she needs to improve her mobility, so how can she achieve that? She thought that maybe she should even use the wind elemental feature and learn to fly. And sure, you could do that too, but that technique would take too much of her spiritual power. And he thought there should clearly be a worthwhile idea in his mind. Jilan replied that if she needed to increase her mobility, maybe she should ride a horse during battle. The protagonist immediately agreed with her, and the girl thought that if she rides a horse during the battle, he will be able to keep the opponent at the right distance, and he will not be able to get close to her. And besides, he comes from the steppes. Horses are very valuable there. Sue appreciated that and asked if she could use a very fast demonic creature instead of a horse. She would just have to tame it. And maybe tomorrow go to the mountains and look for one for her. They just don't have any classes. In the morning, Z met her near the mountain and was shocked because he didn't even think that so many people would go with them. Shalan replied that it's more fun together. If there are so many of them, the demonic creatures, sensing their spiritual power, will immediately hide. Lynn immediately said that she heard that he has been going out to hunt demonic monsters since he was 8 years old, and thought she should follow her example and spend more time practicing. Yun also replied that it was the right thing to do, but they weren't here to kill them. They needed to tame one, and he just didn't have anything to do. And Hua said that she had prepared a lot of delicious things, and she also took some drinks with her, and they would find a nice place and have a picnic right away. So thanked and replied that he didn't think it was worth it to bring alcohol with them. Yoon suddenly noticed that the main character had brought his sword with him just in case. Sue got really pissed off, and he was sick of this guy. And after counting them, he decides that one of the girls will go to him, and gives them the right to be the first to choose their soulmates. They're all divinely beautiful anyway. Suddenly Sue looked up and asked the guy, did he feel it too? Yoon replied that yes, and they are demonic beings, and there are quite a few of them. Sue said he could feel it too. And apparently it has enough power to hide its location, and they should be careful. And if it's a level 5 creature, they'll be in a lot of trouble. At this moment, they were already being watched by a demon who was sitting in the bushes. Meanwhile, the principal arrived at Liu Qing's medical science teacher. He asked her how the disciples' wounds were. Qing replied that the broken bones had already healed, and thought in that respect he would be fine. But the poisoning would be quite difficult to cure. It would probably take quite some time. The student woke up and apologized to the teacher for not being attentive. The headmaster replied that recently, the demonic creatures in the vicinity of the academy had been giving them too much trouble, and he thought they should ban students from that area for a while. That way they can protect them from any kind of incidents. Suddenly, the headmaster feels very uneasy, and his intuition tells him that Seo is looking for trouble on his own head again. The headmaster is so angry that even his teeth in his mouth start to crack. Meanwhile, Sai and his friends were in the forest and strolling around as if they were at home. But all of a sudden, a demonic creature that was very fast suddenly ran near them. Hua was so much frightened that she immediately trembled. She didn't even have time to see the creature before she immediately dropped the basket. But it actually turned out that Hua's food basket had been stolen. Jalan immediately said that it was a demonic creature. The creature didn't stop and ran between them. The creature stopped behind them and held the basket with its tail. Everyone looked at it and thought that this cat was so cute. But Hua started to deny and told them that they shouldn't be fooled by its appearance. He backed up and started yelling that it was a demonic creature and they shouldn't relax. Hua was upset and said that it stole her food. She wants them to starve to death. And what a vile animal. Yun immediately loaded his ice bullets and fired them straight at the cat. But by the time the bullets reached their target, the cat wasn't there anymore. It had managed to get away. Seo realized that it was fast, and Yun's new technique was much faster than his gun, but he still couldn't hit that nimble cat. The cat was so fast that it was hard to keep track of it. Yun thought that she was just despising him, but Lin thought she was very smart and cute. C saw her start to run off into the forest and ordered everyone to follow her and catch her. The cat didn't even let go of the basket for a minute and ran off with her through the forest. Sai realized that she was much faster than them and could have easily gotten away by now, and he felt as if she was purposely leading them somewhere. And he even asked Yun to be more careful. And if he's not wrong, they're going to be in big trouble soon. Sue asked him if she knew what this creature was and what its power was. Yun replied that it was harmless, but the location of its dwelling place. There would clearly be another demonic creature of a much higher level there. Suddenly, Hua told them to stop and asked that they look at the trees. They are withering here, and there was clearly something wrong here. And as she realized, there are large amounts of poisonous fumes in the air. If they breathed them for any length of time, they would be poisoned, and asked them to make sure they take the antidote soon. Jalan looked around, and it seemed to her that she had brought them instead of the dwelling of other demonic creatures. But with slow movements, a creature called Snake was slowly descending behind her back, and picking the perfect moment it with its sharp and poisonous teeth tried to bite her. But Sai saw this in advance and taking it aside pulled out his gun and fired at it. The bullet was so fast and accurate that it simply tore the snake's head off. Sue asked her if she was okay. Jalan was a little scared but answered that she was. Yun also told everyone to be careful. The leaves on the trees aren't real. They're poisonous snakes. Looking up, they saw that a large number of snakes were in the trees and descending slowly towards them. The boys were all surrounded on different sides and immediately set about destroying them with magic. Sai turned to the guy and said that he had warned him of some serious danger. But there are only second-level demonic creatures here. Them, he thought they could deal with. Yun decided to tell him about the poisonous snakes. First, they poison the area they live in. And second, pretending to be foliage, they suddenly attack their victims. Third, they never live alone, but survive in packs. And most importantly, each pack has its own queen who rules them. He asked him what level he thought this queen should be to rule such a huge number of poisonous snakes. At this moment, the queen herself was underground and could see everything that was going on above her. With slow movements, the snake queen began to emerge into the light. She was so strong and huge that everything collapsed around her that she touched. The guy saw her and Jilin asked what kind of creature was this. Z immediately ordered Yun to make a wall of ice. Yun heard the request and immediately surrounded them with ice, making a barrier around the snake. Hiding inside, Lin asked Sue, what should they do? And maybe they should run away. Sue replied that no, they can't do that, and judging by its size, it can quickly develop great speed. It'll catch up with them in no time. And besides, they're out of her sight now. The ice wall has lowered the temperature of the air around them. Temporarily, she wouldn't be able to feel the warmth of their bodies. Yun thought that if they didn't leave this place, they would have to fight her sooner or later. Sue suddenly asked Lin if she could see the scales on her body. Let her try without attracting its attention, gently stabbing it with her sword. And then they'll see how dense it is. Lin suddenly immediately used a melee technique, and with a swift move, she attacked the snake's scales. Sue wasn't even surprised after her strike that it didn't even leave a scratch on her. And if her scales are that dense, then even her grenades can't harm her. Fighting her is a very bad idea. Sue closed his eyes and thought about what he should do, and what he would do if he met such an opponent in the game, and need to find her weak point. The protagonist started to think which part to attack it. They need someone who can distract her. But there is no such person among them who can move faster or, at least with the same speed as her. Suddenly, Sword told Sai that it was that cat that brought them here. His master asked him why on earth she had done that. Sword replied that because they are enemies, that cat just wants to take down the Snake Queen with their hands. And that's her goal. And since they're enemies, she thinks it's worth trying to ask for her help. Seo stepped out onto the barrier and began to look for the cat with his eyes, and he spotted it behind a tree. He started calling her to him. She heard such a call and came over to keep them company. Sai turned to her and said that she wanted to get rid of the snake, then maybe she would help them in this. And thought she was cute after all. The cat walked up to Zilan and started meowing. C saw that right away, and the sword told him to ask her to concentrate her natural wind power. The protagonist immediately asked her to concentrate the natural wind power around her. Zilan understood everything and applied her wind magic around the cat. But suddenly something unexpected happened. The cat became several times bigger due to such. Jilan was surprised and said that she had absorbed the natural wind power. And Z also realized that this was the very thing they needed too. And since that was the case, let them listen to him carefully now. After telling his whole plan, he asked them if they understood everything. Even though he was a bit dangerous, he thought they should give it a try. The girls replied that they trusted him, and Sai went over to the cat and said that they need to distract her by any means necessary. And their victory is totally up to her, and he believes in her. The cat immediately flew out of the barrier and stood in front of the snake. The snake, seeing its prey in front of it, immediately opened its huge mouth to bite it. But at the last moment, the cat had time to dodge the snake's bite. Sai immediately told Lin that the first strike would be for her, and the target is her eyes. Lin immediately drew her sword and understood the guy's order. The snake started chasing the cat and didn't even pay attention to anything around it. Sai asked his men to wait and ordered Hua to increase her strength. Hama understood everything and mentally gave her power through the ice barrier. She realized that she had a unique ability. Unlike melee warriors, and warriors who use spiritual and natural power to create various techniques. And she knows how to transform her spiritual power to increase another person's power or to heal them. Isha sensed that she was already nearby and told Lin to act. Seeing a huge eye in front of her, Lin immediately pierced the eye with her sword. But she stuck her sword so deep that the sword stuck and she was lifted into the air with it. And Sai saw that she had developed a blind spot on her left side, and they needed to stick to it. Lin tried with all her might to stay in the air, and even grasped the snake's scales with her fingers. At that moment, Si and Jalan were already on the cat, and she decided to attack the snake with the arrow of the gods. Walking next to the snake, she released several arrows into the creature's body. But the snake managed to turn around and chase the guys on the cat. Sai, seeing this, applied a level 4 technique, a huge block of ice. He made a huge block of ice, which he immediately released with tremendous speed onto the snake's body. After that, he immediately shouted for Yun to act. Yun rejoiced and replied that it was just in time, and applied his huge hammer. Yun formed it over the snake and let loose on it with the sharp end. Lin looked at all this and shouted that it didn't work, and they can't get the scales through. But Si replied to tell them to trust him. Everything is going according to plan. Jilan immediately applied her arrow of the gods, a spiral shot. The snake felt the pain that it even opened its mouth, and Z, seeing this, opened his grenade and threw it in its direction. After a few explosions, they thought it was finished, but through the smoke, they couldn't see it. As soon as the smoke cleared, they saw that the snake was no longer moving or giving signs of life. The boys after that immediately began to rejoice that they had defeated the creature. And Hua told the main character that he was really very strong, and if it wasn't for him, they would never be able to deal with such a demonic creature. And Yun promised that next time he wouldn't go anywhere with him, and he'd rather sit in class than all of this. Seo agreed with him too and wished he could go to class. But either way, he thinks they accomplished what they wanted. Jalan walked over to the cat and asked it if it agreed to be her partner. The cat answered her with its call. That same night, the headmaster was resting in his room and thought of nothing. Suddenly, a servant burst in on him and shouted that they were in trouble. The new level 5 demonic creature that had taken up residence near their school had been killed. And judging from her wounds, she was killed by Sai's grenades. The principal didn't even pay attention to it and thought the protagonist was doing it to spite him.